Welcome back to Tina Romance Library, where powerful alphas fall hard, and the women they underestimate change everything. Every story here is complete, immersive, and emotion-driven. No cliffhangers, no rushed endings, just full romances you can sink into. Today's story? It starts with a small mistake, the kind. When the disgraced, pregnant Omega is offered a fake relationship by the Alpha King at a humiliating ball, she accepts his protection, never imagining he's actually the mysterious one-night stand who got her pregnant in the first place. Turns out the pretend baby daddy situation gets a whole lot more complicated when you're both too drunk and drugged to remember you've already met, and his diaper-changing skills are somehow worse than his political strategies. So if you love possessive alphas, strong heroines who don't beg, slow-burn tension, emotional payoffs, and stories that actually finish, you're in the right place. I need you to join the pack right now by subscribing. Leave a like if you enjoy immersive romance, and settle in because once the story begins, we don't stop until the ending. Now, let's get into it. I was 7 months pregnant, and sitting in the corner of a ballroom that smelled like champagne and lies. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and the air itself rejects you? That's what it was like. Every whisper, and there were so many whispers, felt like a blade sliding between my ribs. I could hear them even over the music. Especially over the music. The violins were just background noise to the real soundtrack of the night. My humiliation, served cold in public. Look at her. Can you believe she actually came? Pregnant. Abandoned. No mate. No shame either, apparently. I kept my hands folded over my belly, like I could shield my baby from their venom, like I could pretend I didn't feel every single pair of eyes that flicked toward me, then away, like I was something dirty they didn't want to be caught staring at. My dress didn't fit right anymore. Nothing fit right anymore. Not my body, not my life, not this pack that used to feel like home and now felt like a trap with no exit. Someone laughed, sharp, pointed. A woman in a silver gown, her lips red as fresh blood, leaned toward her circle and said something I couldn't hear, but I didn't need to hear it. I saw the way they all looked at me after, pity mixed with contempt, the kind of look that says you did this to yourself. And maybe I did. Maybe I was a fool for believing him, for thinking he'd stay, for thinking love meant something more than a fleeting touch in the dark before he disappeared like smoke. My baby's father didn't just leave, he erased himself. No goodbye, no explanation, just gone. And I was left here, visibly marked by him, carrying proof of my stupidity under my heart. I wanted to leave. God, I wanted to run. But my legs wouldn't move. My pride, what little I had left, wouldn't let me slink away like a beaten dog. So I stayed. I sat. I endured. And then, footsteps. Not the quick, shuffling kind. Not the hesitant ones people use when they're trying to avoid you. These were slow, deliberate, heavy with purpose. The kind of footsteps that make a room hold its breath. The whispers stopped. I mean completely. Like someone had reached into the air and strangled every voice at once. The violins faltered. Even the champagne seemed to stop fizzing. I didn't look up at first. I couldn't. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might crack a rib. But I felt him. You know how they say alphas have a presence? That's an understatement. He had gravity, the kind that pulls you in whether you want it or not. The kind that makes your wolf sit up and pay attention even when you're trying to disappear. I looked up, and there he was, the Alpha King. Not just an alpha. The Alpha. The one every pack whispered about. The one whose name alone could start wars or end them. He was standing in front of me, dressed in black like he'd walked straight out of some dark fairy tale, and his eyes slate gray, cold as winter, were locked on mine. He didn't say anything at first. He just looked at me. Really looked. Like he could see through the dress, through the shame, through the walls I'd built around myself just to survive this night. And then, he moved. Not away. Toward. He lowered himself. Just slightly. Just enough that we were almost eye level. Close enough that I could smell him pine and smoke and something wild I couldn't name. Close enough that the entire room seemed to tilt on its axis. His voice, when he finally spoke, was low, rough, the kind of voice that doesn't ask it commands. But it was quiet, meant only for me. Pretend your baby is mine. I stopped breathing. I'm serious. My lungs just quit. My brain short-circuited trying to process what he'd just said. trying to understand why the most powerful wolf in the territory was kneeling in front of a disgraced, pregnant Omega and offering me what? A lie? A lifeline? A leash? His expression didn't change. He wasn't joking. He wasn't cruel. He was just waiting. Like he'd laid down a card and now it was my move. The room was still silent. Everyone watching. Everyone waiting to see what I would do. Waiting to see if I'd take his hand or slap it away. I should have asked why. I should have demanded answers. I should have done a lot of things. But all I could think was, what if I say yes? And here's the thing no one tells you about lies. Sometimes they're the only truth that can save you. But what no one knew, not even me in that moment, was that this lie, this beautiful, impossible, dangerous lie, it would become the most dangerous truth of all. I should probably tell you how I ended up in that ballroom in the first place. How a girl like me, Lady Anna, they used to call me, back when that title meant something, became the kind of woman an alpha king would need to rescue with a lie. It started with wine. No, that's not quite right. It started with jealousy. The wine just made it possible. My name is Anna, Lady Anna of the Crescent Moon Pack, if you want to be formal about it, though no one's been formal with me in months. I'm the daughter of the Beta Well, one of his daughters, the legitimate one, the one born to his true mate before she died, and left him hollow enough to take a second wife who never quite forgave me for existing. That's where Sabrina comes in, my half-sister. And I need you to understand something about Sabrina. She's beautiful. The kind of beautiful that makes people stupid. Golden hair that catches light like it's been dipped in honey. Eyes so blue they look artificial. A smile that could make grown wolves whimper. She had everything. Everything except the one thing she wanted most. She wanted to be chosen. See, in our pack, there's this ceremony, the lunar blessing. Happens once every 5 years under the full moon. And it's supposedly where the moon goddess herself picks the next generation of pack leaders, mates, destinies. All that cosmic nonsense wrapped up in ritual and wine, and a whole lot of political maneuvering. The ritual wine is sacred, or it's supposed to be. Made from moonflower petals that only bloom once a year, blessed by the elders, infused with herbs that are meant to open your spirit to the goddess's will. When you drink it, you're supposed to feel warm, connected. Like the universe is whispering secrets directly into your soul. The elders called it destiny. Everyone else called it wine. I should have called it what it really was, a weapon. But I didn't know that. Not then. I trusted Sabrina. God help me, I actually trusted her. When she brought me that cup before the ceremony, her smile so sweet it could have rotted teeth, I thought she was being kind, sisterly. We'd never been close. How could we be? With her mother's resentment sitting between us like a wall. But I wanted to believe we could be. I wanted to believe that blood meant something. Here, she said, pressing the carved wooden cup into my hands. You look nervous. This'll help. I was nervous. I'd been nervous for weeks. The lunar blessing wasn't just some party, it was a chance. A chance to find a mate, to secure my future, to finally feel like I belonged somewhere, to someone. So when she offered me that cup, when she told me it was just a little extra blessing, something the elders made special for the Beta's daughters, I believed her. I drank it. All of it. It tasted like summer and starlight and something else. Something bitter underneath that I couldn't quite place. But I figured that was just the herbs. The sacred stuff always tastes a little wrong, doesn't it? A little too earthy, a little too wild. Within minutes I felt it. The warmth she'd promised. But it wasn't the gentle, glowing warmth the elders described. This was heat. Liquid fire spreading through my veins, pooling low in my belly, making my skin feel too tight and my thoughts feel too loose. The room started to blur at the edges. Faces became shapes. Voices became noise. Anna? Someone's hand on my arm. I couldn't remember who. Are you all right? I wasn't all right. I was burning up from the inside out. And my wolf, my usually quiet, well-behaved wolf, was clawing at my insides, like she was trying to break free, like she needed something, someone. Moonherb. That's what Sabrina put in my drink. I didn't know it then. I wouldn't know for weeks, not until it was far too late. Moonherb looks like any other blessing herb, but it's not sacred. It's illegal. Banned by every pack council for a reason. Because it doesn't open your spirit, it destroys your control. It turns your wolf feral with need, makes you desperate, strips away everything civilized until all that's left is instinct and hunger. It's what wolves use when they want to force a mating bond. And Sabrina gave it to me like it was a gift. I stumbled out of the ceremony hall. I remember that part. I remember the cool air hitting my face and doing nothing to stop the fire in my blood. I remember thinking I just needed to walk it off, to breathe, to get away from all those people and their staring eyes. I don't remember much after that. Just fragments, hands, a voice I didn't recognize, the feeling of grass against my back and stars spinning overhead, the certainty bone deep and absolute that this was right, that this was meant to be, that the goddess herself had led me here. Lies, all of it. The herb talking, not the divine. By the time I woke up the next morning, alone in the forest with my dress torn and my body aching, he was already gone. Whoever he was, whatever he was, gone like he'd never existed at all, leaving nothing behind but the faint smell of earth and regret. And a baby, though I wouldn't know about that part for another month. Sabrina got what she wanted, by the way. She was chosen that night, blessed by the goddess or so everyone said, matched with a wealthy alpha from the Northern Territories. There were congratulations, celebrations. Our father looked at her like she'd hung the moon herself. No one noticed I was missing until it was too late to matter. And when I finally worked up the courage to tell anyone what had happened, when I tried to explain that something was wrong, that the wine had done something to me, Sabrina just smiled. That same sweet smile she'd given me when she handed me the cup. "You're confused, Anna," she said softly, in front of our father, in front of the elders. "The ritual wine affects everyone differently. Maybe you just had too much. Maybe I just had too much. Like it was my fault. Like I'd done this to myself. And my father, my own father, looked at me with something worse than anger, disappointment, shame. Like I'd stained the family name on purpose. So I stayed quiet after that. I carried my secret until it became impossible to hide. Until my belly started to swell and the whispers started spreading and there was no more pretending that Lady Anna was anything other than a cautionary tale about what happens when you lose control. That's how I ended up in that ballroom. Pregnant. Alone. Watching my half-sister dance in her perfect dress with her perfect mate while I sat in the corner like a ghost haunting my own life. That's how I ended up desperate enough to say yes when the Alpha King offered me a lie that sounded an awful lot like salvation. But here's the thing about that night, the real night, the one that started all of this. I need to tell you what actually happened. Because it wasn't some faceless stranger in the dark. It wasn't some random wolf who disappeared like smoke. It was him. I just didn't know it yet. The lunar blessing ceremony had been going for hours by the time I stumbled outside. The moon was full and fat and so bright it hurt to look at, hanging there like the goddess was watching everything unfold and taking notes. My skin was on fire. That warmth Sabrina promised had turned into something else entirely, something that made my bones ache and my wolf pace restlessly inside me, whining for something I couldn't name. I needed air. Space. Silence. The gardens behind the ceremony hall were supposed to be off-limits during the ritual, but I didn't care. I couldn't breathe in there with all those bodies and all that noise, and Sabrina's eyes following me like she was waiting for something to happen. So I walked. Stumbled, really. My legs weren't working right. Nothing was working right. That's when I ran into him. Literally. Crashed right into his chest because I wasn't watching where I was going, and apparently neither was he. I would have fallen if he hadn't caught me, hands on my shoulders, steadying, warm even through the fabric of my dress. "Whoa," he said, and his voice was like gravel wrapped in honey, rough but sweet. "You all right?" I looked up. And I need you to understand I'd seen a lot of wolves in my life. Strong wolves, alpha wolves, wolves who commanded respect just by existing. But this man, he was something else, tall enough that I had to tilt my head back to see his face. Broad shoulders that blocked out the moonlight. Dark hair that fell across his forehead like he'd been running his hands through it. And his eyes, God, his eyes, they were gray. Storm cloud gray, the kind of gray that held lightning. But there was something off about him. Not wrong exactly, just loose. Like his edges were blurred. His movements were careful, deliberate, like he was thinking too hard about each one. He was drunk. Not falling down drunk, not sloppy, but definitely not sober. I could smell it on him, whiskey and something darker, and there was a heaviness to his gaze that had nothing to do with the moonlight. I started, but the words tangled in my mouth. The heat in my blood was getting worse. My wolf was practically throwing herself against my ribs, trying to get closer to him, to this stranger who smelled like pine forests and winter storms and something wild I couldn't identify. I don't feel right. His hands were still on my shoulders, still steadying me. His grip tightened slightly, and I watched something shift in his expression. Concern, maybe, or recognition. Neither do I, he said quietly, almost like a confession. We stood there for a moment, two impaired wolves in a moonlit garden, holding on to each other like we were the only solid things in a spinning world. And maybe we were. "What's your name?" he asked. I should have walked away. Should have made some excuse and gone back inside where there were people and witnesses and safety. But I didn't want safety. For the first time in my life, I didn't want to be careful or proper or good. I wanted to feel seen. "Anna," I whispered. He repeated it, slowly, like he was tasting it. "Anna." The way he said my name did something to me. Made the fire in my veins spike hotter. Made my wolf purr with satisfaction. It wasn't just the herb, I know that now. It was him. Something about him called to something in me. Something deeper than chemistry or pheromones or whatever scientific explanation you want to slap on it. "I should go," I said, but I didn't move. Couldn't move. His hands were still on my shoulders, and mine had somehow ended up fisted in the front of his shirt, and neither of us was letting go. "You should," he agreed, but he didn't step back, didn't release me, just looked at me with those storm-gray eyes like he was trying to solve a puzzle he didn't have all the pieces to. "But you're not going to." It wasn't a question. "No," I breathed. "I'm not." His thumb traced a circle on my shoulder. Just once. Such a small gesture. But it sent electricity racing down my spine, made my breath catch, made my wolf howl with something that felt dangerously close to recognition. "I don't do this," he said, and I believed him. There was something almost pained in his voice, like he was fighting himself, like he was losing. I'm not." "I know," I interrupted, even though I didn't know. Didn't know anything about him except that he smelled right and felt safe, and when he looked at me, I didn't feel like a disappointment or a mistake or a burden. I felt like maybe, just maybe, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Me neither. And that was true. I'd never done anything like this, never even thought about it. I was the good daughter, the quiet one, the one who followed rules and met expectations and never caused trouble. But the herb in my system didn't care about my track record, and my wolf didn't care about propriety. And honestly, in that moment, drowning in his scent and his eyes and the feeling of his hands on my skin, I didn't care either. "Tell me to stop," he said roughly. His forehead dropped to mine. We were breathing the same air now, sharing space in a way that felt more intimate than it should. "Tell me this is a bad idea and I'll walk away." He would have. I could hear it in his voice, the iron will underneath the whiskey, the control he was barely holding on to. If I'd said no, if I'd pushed him away, he would have let me go, would have disappeared into the night, and I never would have seen him again. But I didn't say no. "Don't stop," I whispered instead. "Please, I don't want you to stop." Something broke in him then. Or maybe it broke in both of us. His mouth found mine, and it wasn't gentle. Couldn't be gentle. Not with whatever was burning through both our veins, but it wasn't cruel either. It was desperate. Searching. Like we were both looking for something we'd lost, and somehow finding it in each other. He tasted like whiskey and regret, and something else. Something that made my wolf sing. "Not here," he murmured against my lips. "Come with me." And I did. God help me. I followed him deeper into the gardens, away from the lights and the music and the ceremony that was still going on without us. He found a place where the grass was soft and the trees made shadows thick enough to hide in, and when he laid me down gentle, so gentle, like I was something precious he was afraid of breaking, I felt tears sting my eyes, because no one had ever touched me like that before, like I mattered. "You're beautiful," he said, and his voice was wrecked, awed, like he couldn't quite believe I was real. So damn beautiful. I wasn't. I knew I wasn't. But in that moment, with the moon watching and his hands trembling slightly as they traced patterns on my skin, I believed him. "So are you," I whispered back. He laughed, quiet and raw. "You're impaired. You don't mean that." "I do," I insisted, reaching up to touch his face. Feeling the rough stubble under my palm, the sharp line of his jaw, the way he leaned into my touch like he was starving for it. "I mean it. What happened next, I'm not going to give you details. Not because it wasn't important. It was. It is. But because some things are private, sacred even. And because what mattered wasn't the physical act, though. My wolf had never felt more complete, but the way he held me after. The way his arms wrapped around me like a shield. The way he murmured things I couldn't quite hear but felt in my bones. For one night, I wasn't alone. For one night, I was chosen. And when I woke up the next morning, cold and sore and utterly alone with nothing but grass stains on my dress and his scent fading from my skin, I didn't know that the man who'd held me like I mattered, who'd made me feel seen for the first time in my life, was the Alpha King. I didn't know I'd just spent the night with the most powerful wolf in the territory. I didn't know that lie he'd offer me months later in that ballroom. It wouldn't be a lie at all. I ran. That's the part I'm not proud of. The part that still makes my chest ache when I think about it. I woke up just before dawn with his arms still heavy across my waist, his breath warm against my neck, and the first thing I felt wasn't regret. It was terror, because the moon herb was wearing off. Reality was seeping back in like cold water, and with it came the understanding of what I'd done, what we'd done. I'd given myself to a complete stranger in the middle of the most sacred ceremony of our pack's calendar. I'd abandoned the ritual, disappeared, and now I was lying in the grass with a man whose name I didn't even know, wearing a torn dress and carrying the evidence of my recklessness on every inch of my skin. What would my father say? What would the elders think? What would Sabrina, the wine, the heat, the desperate, clawing need that had driven me out into these gardens in the first place? That wasn't normal. That wasn't me. Something had been wrong. Something had been done to me. But how could I ever prove it? Who would believe me over Sabrina's perfect smile and innocent eyes? I had to go. Had to get out of there before he woke up and saw me in the daylight. Before he realized what a mistake he'd made. Because men like him, strong, powerful, the kind of wolf who moved through the world with that much confidence, even drunk, they didn't stay with girls like me. The overlooked daughter, the disappointment, whatever magic the moonlight had cast was going to break the second the sun came up, and I couldn't bear to see the regret in his eyes when it did, so I so carefully lifted his arm off my waist. He stirred, murmured something I couldn't make out, but didn't wake. I gathered what was left of my dignity and my torn dress, and I ran. Barefoot through the gardens, past the ceremony hall where the last dregs of celebration were finally dying down, back to my rooms before anyone could see me. I didn't look back. I couldn't, because if I'd looked back I might have stayed, and staying would have meant answers, names, consequences I wasn't ready to face. Henry woke to birdsong and an empty space beside him. He knew she was gone before he even opened his eyes, could feel the absence of her warmth, the way the air had changed from thick with her scent wildflowers, and something sweet he couldn't name to just the ordinary smell of morning dew and grass. His head was pounding. The whiskey from last night, God, he'd drunk too much. He'd known it even while he was doing it, but he'd needed something to take the edge off. Needed something to quiet the weight of the crown that sat heavy on his shoulders even when he wasn't wearing it. The Alpha King wasn't supposed to show up drunk to a lunar blessing ceremony. Wasn't supposed to hide in the gardens like a coward avoiding responsibility. Wasn't supposed to fall into bed or grass, technically with a woman whose name he barely remembered through the haze. Anna. He sat up slowly, pressing the heels of his hands against his eyes. Anna. He remembered that much. Remembered her face in the moonlight, all soft edges and startled vulnerability. Remembered the way she'd looked at him like he was something more than his title. Like he was just a man. God, when was the last time someone had looked at him like that? He searched the area around him, hoping maybe she'd left something behind. A clue, a breadcrumb to follow back to her. But there was nothing. Just crushed grass where they'd lain together, and the fading imprint of her scent that was already being carried away by the morning breeze. Alpha King of the entire realm. Commander of armies. Ruler of territories that stretched farther than most wolves would travel in a lifetime. Couldn't even find a name. He dragged a hand through his hair, trying to piece together the fragments of last night through the whiskey fog. She'd been different. Not just beautiful though she was, devastatingly so, but real. Present. There'd been something broken in her eyes that matched something broken in him, and for a few hours they'd fitted those jagged pieces together and pretended they were whole. He'd told her things, hadn't he? Or maybe he'd just thought them so loudly she'd heard them anyway. About the loneliness, the weight, the way being king meant everyone wanted something from you but no one actually wanted you. And she'd understood. He'd felt it in the way she'd touched him, careful and reverent, like she knew what it meant to be fragile underneath all that strength. He should let it go, should write it off as a drunken mistake and move on. He had responsibilities. Meetings with the council, treaties to negotiate, a kingdom to run. But he couldn't stop thinking about the way she'd whispered his name, except she hadn't, had she? Because he'd never told her his name, never told her who he was. For once in his miserable political life, he'd just been a man, not a king, not a title, just Henry, and she'd chosen him anyway. Or she had until she'd vanished like a dream before dawn. He stood, brushing grass off his clothes, trying to ignore the ache in his chest that had nothing to do with the hangover. Maybe it was better this way. Cleaner. No messy goodbyes or awkward morning conversations. No moment where she realized who he actually was and everything changed. No watching her eyes shift from warm to calculating as she figured out what he could do for her. This way, he could keep the memory pure, untainted. One perfect night where he'd been seen for who he was, not what he was. Even if it meant he'd spend the rest of his life wondering what her last name was. I scrubbed my skin raw in the bath. Tried to wash away his scent, his touch, the feeling of his hands on my body and his voice in my ear. But soap and water couldn't touch the marks he'd left on my soul. The way he'd made me feel, just for a few hours, like I was worth something. My wolf was howling inside me. Confused, angry. She didn't understand why we'd left, why we'd run from the one thing that had felt right in months, maybe ever. But wolves don't understand shame. Don't understand reputation and consequences and the 1,000 tiny ways the world punishes women for wanting things. I couldn't tell anyone. Wouldn't tell anyone. This would be my secret. My one night of rebellion, locked away where no one could judge it or ruin it or use it against me. Except secrets have a way of growing. And 9 weeks later, when I was bent over the toilet in my bathroom, retching up breakfast for the 3rd morning in a row, I realized some secrets refuse to stay hidden. Some secrets become babies. And this baby, this impossible, beautiful, terrifying consequence of one night when I'd forgotten to be careful, was going to destroy everything I had left. I pressed my hand against my still flat stomach and felt my world tilt sideways. Because I didn't know his name, didn't know how to find him, didn't even know if he'd remember me through the haze of whatever we'd both been drinking, whatever had been burning through our blood that night. I just knew I was alone, and I was going to have to face what came next by myself. I couldn't hide it forever. For weeks I tried. Wore looser dresses. Avoided meals where people might notice I couldn't keep food down. Made excuses when my stepmother commented on how pale I looked, how tired, but my body had other plans. By the 3rd month, there was a curve to my belly that no amount of careful dressing could disguise. And wolves, we have sharper senses than humans. Sharper eyes. They notice things. Sabrina noticed first. Of course she did. She'd been watching me like a hawk since the ceremony, waiting for something. Maybe she knew what the moon herb would do. Maybe she'd planned this exact outcome. I'll never know for sure. But I remember the moment her eyes dropped to my stomach during breakfast, the way her mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Anna," she said sweetly, loud enough that everyone at the table could hear. "Are you feeling all right? You look different." My father's fork paused halfway to his mouth. My stepmother's eyes sharpened. And I knew that whatever fragile peace I'd been living in was about to shatter. "I'm fine," I said, but my voice came out wrong. Thin, guilty. "Are you sure?" Sabrina pressed, all false concern. "Because you've been sick for weeks, and you're positively glowing. That's what they say, isn't it? That pregnant women glow?" The word hung in the air like poison. Pregnant. My stepmother's teacup hit the saucer with a crack. My father went very, very still, the kind of still that comes before violence. "Anna." His voice was low, controlled, deadly. "Is there something you need to tell me?" I should have lied. Should have laughed it off, blamed it on stress or illness or anything else. But I was so tired of lying, so tired of carrying this secret alone, of feeling like I was going to collapse under the weight of it. "Yes," I whispered. "I'm pregnant." The silence that followed was worse than screaming. My father stood slowly. His chair scraped against the floor, the sound like nails on a cough-board. When he looked at me, I barely recognized him. This wasn't the man who'd held me when I was small, who'd taught me to recognize pack members by scent, who'd once called me his little moon. This was the beta, the enforcer, the man who dealt with problems. And I had just become a problem. "Whose?" The word came out like gravel. "Who's the father?" "I don't..." My throat closed up. "I don't know." Wrong answer. So completely the wrong answer. His fist slammed into the table hard enough to make everything jump. "You don't know?" "It was the ceremony. I tried to explain, hating how small my voice sounded. How pathetic. Something happened. I wasn't myself. You disgraced this family. His voice was shaking now. Not with sadness, with rage. Pure incandescent rage. Do you understand what you've done? Do you have any idea what this means? I did. God, I did. I could see it in my stepmother's disgusted expression, in Sabrina's barely concealed satisfaction, in the way my father wouldn't even look at me anymore. I'm sorry, I breathed. Sorry? He laughed, sharp and bitter. You're sorry. You spread your legs for some nameless wolf and now you're carrying his bastard and you're sorry? The words hit like physical blows, each one calculated to wound, to shame, and they worked. I felt myself shrinking, curling inward, trying to make myself small enough to disappear. You will get rid of it, my stepmother said coldly. Not a suggestion, a command. There are herbs. The healer can... No. The word came out of me before I could stop it. Loud, certain. Maybe the most certain I'd been about anything in months. My father's eyes snapped to mine. What did you say? No, I repeated, pressing my hand protectively over my stomach. Over the tiny life growing there that hadn't asked for any of this. I won't. I can't. You can and you will, he said, stepping closer. Looming, using his size to intimidate like I was some rogue wolf he needed to put down. You think I'm going to let you parade around with visible proof of your shame? You think any decent male will want you now, with another man's child? I don't care, I said, even though it was a lie. I did care. I cared desperately, but not enough to do what they were asking, not enough to destroy the one thing that had come from that night, the one thing that was mine. You don't care, he repeated slowly, dangerously. Then let me make this very clear. If you keep that child, you are no longer my daughter. You will not live under my roof. You will not carry the family name. You will be nothing. Do you understand? Nothing. The room was spinning. My stepmother looked satisfied. Sabrina was watching with bright, eager eyes, like this was the best entertainment she'd had in months. You would choose him over your own family? My father demanded. Some stranger who used you and left you? Over us? But that wasn't the choice, was it? It wasn't about choosing the father a man I couldn't even name, whose face I could barely remember in daylight. It was about choosing myself. Choosing not to let them make me erase the consequences of my own life, just to make things convenient for them. It was about refusing to let them punish me for something Sabrina had done to me. I'm keeping the baby, I said quietly. My father's face went purple. For a second, I thought he might actually hit me. His hand rose, trembling with fury, and I flinched back instinctively. He didn't hit me, but somehow, what he did next was worse. He turned away. Just turned his back on me like I'd already ceased to exist, like I was already gone. Get out, he said to the wall. Pack your things. You have until sundown. After that, if you're still in this house, I'll have you removed by force. Father, don't call me that. His shoulders were rigid, unyielding. I have one daughter. Her name is Sabrina. You are nothing to me. The pain of it, God. It was worse than anything physical. Worse than the moon herb burning through my veins. Worse than waking up alone in that garden. This was my father, the man who was supposed to protect me, love me, stand by me even when I made mistakes, and he was throwing me away like trash. I looked at my stepmother. No help there, just cold satisfaction. Looked at Sabrina, who smiled at me sweetly and shrugged, like to say, what did you expect? You did this, I said to her, quietly, just for her ears. The wine. You knew what would happen. Her smile widened. Prove it. And she was right. I couldn't. It was her word against mine, and hers carried the weight of the golden daughter, the blessed one, the one who'd done everything right while I'd done everything wrong. So I left the dining room with whatever dignity I had left. Went to my room, not my room anymore, I supposed, and started packing. I didn't have much. Some clothes, a few books, the necklace my mother had left me before she died, the one my father had never let me wear because it made him sad. I put it on now, let the silver moon pendant rest against my chest where my heart was breaking into pieces small enough to slip between my ribs. By sundown I was gone. I found a small apartment in the worst part of pack territory, the kind of place where no one asked questions and everyone had secrets they were running from. It was dark and cold and smelled like mildew, but it was mine. The first thing I'd ever had that was truly mine. The months that followed were brutal. Without my family's support, Without their name or protection, I was nothing. Just another ruined omega that polite society looked past. I took whatever work I could find cleaning, mending, anything that didn't require references or respectability. The other wolves whispered when I walked by. Pointed. Judged. Some of the males assumed I was available, that a woman in my position would be grateful for any attention. I learned to walk with my head down, to make myself invisible. But at night, alone in that terrible apartment, I'd put my hand on my growing belly and feel the baby move, strong, stubborn, alive. And I'd think, you're worth it. Whatever this costs me, you're worth it. Because society could punish me for surviving, could strip away my name and my home and my dignity, could make me into a cautionary tale for other young women about what happens when you lose control. But they couldn't make me regret my child. They couldn't make me wish away the one pure thing that had come from my ruination. Even if facing that child's future meant walking into a ballroom 7 months pregnant and enduring the stares and whispers and cruel laughter of everyone who'd once called themselves my peers. Even if it meant sitting in that corner, alone, waiting for the moment someone would finally see past the scandal to the person underneath. I just never expected that someone would be him, the Alpha King, offering me a lie that felt like mercy, or maybe offering me a truth neither of us was ready to face. I need to tell you about Henry, because while I was sitting in that corner of the ballroom, drowning in shame and whispers, he was standing across the room in his own private hell, different kind, same weight. Henry Blackthorne, Alpha King of the Northern Territories, ruler of 12 packs, commander of the largest wolf army in the hemisphere, 28 years old, and already carrying the weight of a legacy that went back 5 generations. And completely, utterly alone. He stood near the balcony doors, a glass of champagne in his hand that he hadn't touched, watching the crowd move and shift like a living thing. This was supposed to be a celebration, a gathering of the packs to honor the lunar blessing anniversary, to strengthen alliances, to remind everyone why the Blackthorne line had held power for over a century. But all Henry could think about was her, Anna, the woman from the gardens, the one who'd disappeared before dawn 7 months ago and taken a piece of him with her. He'd searched for her. God, he'd searched. Sent his beta, Marcus, to comb through every registry, every pack roster, every list of attendees from that ceremony. But Anna wasn't much to go on. There were dozens of Annas in the territories. Hundreds, probably. And none of them matched the woman he remembered, soft and broken and real in a way that had made his chest ache. Marcus thought he was losing his mind. Had said as much, actually, just this morning. You rule an entire kingdom, his beta had said, exasperated. But you can't rule your own heart. It's been 7 months, Henry. She's gone. Let it go. But Henry couldn't let it go. Because that night had been the first time in years, maybe ever, that someone had looked at him and seen just a man. Not a king, not a title, not a political opportunity, just Henry. Flawed and drunk and desperate for connection. And she'd given him that. Had touched him like he was precious. Had whispered his name well. Not his name, but the name he'd given her. The one that was his before the crown, like it meant something. He'd spent the last 7 months trying to forget her and failing spectacularly. Your Majesty. Henry turned to find Elder Cornelius approaching, his ancient face set in lines of practiced disapproval. The Elder Council, of course. They'd been circling him all night like vultures, waiting for an opportunity to corner him. Elder, Henry acknowledged, keeping his voice neutral. We need to discuss the succession, Cornelius said without preamble. No pleasantries, no small talk, just straight to the pressure point they'd been prodding for months. You're 28 years old, unmated, no heir. The council is concerned. Concerned, that was one way to put it. Panicking was probably more accurate. The Blackthorne line had never gone this long without producing an heir. His father had been mated by 23, his grandfather by 20. The council expected him to continue the tradition, to secure the bloodline, to do his duty. But Henry couldn't bring himself to care about duty. Not when every woman they paraded in front of him felt wrong, smelled wrong, looked at him with calculating eyes that saw only what he could give them. I'm aware of the council's concerns, Henry said carefully. Awareness is an action. Cornelius stepped closer, lowering his voice. The rival packs are watching, waiting for weakness. If you die without an heir, this kingdom fractures. Everything your family built collapses into civil war. I'm not going to die, Cornelius. You're a warrior, King Henry. You lead from the front. Any battle could be your last. And then what? The elder's eyes were sharp, Merciless. You need a mate. You need a son, preferably both within the year. A mate. As if it were that simple. As if he could just pick someone from the eager crowd of eligible females and force a bond that should be sacred, should be chosen, should feel like her, like Anna, like that one perfect night when everything had aligned and made sense and he'd felt whole for the first time in his life. "I'll consider the council's recommendation," Henry said, which was political speak, for leave me alone. Cornelius wasn't fooled. "Consider quickly. We're running out of time." The elder retreated back into the crowd, leaving Henry with his untouched champagne and his tangled thoughts. He should find someone, should do his duty, should stop obsessing over a woman who'd made it clear she didn't want to be found. But then his eyes drifted across the ballroom, past the dancing couples, past the clusters of nobles pretending to enjoy themselves, past the elaborate decorations and the false smiles, and landed on her, on Anna, sitting in the corner. Alone. Very, very pregnant. Time stopped. Henry's glass slipped from his fingers. He barely heard it shatter against the marble floor. Barely registered Marcus appearing at his elbow, concerned, asking what was wrong. Because it was her. 7 months later. 7 months of searching and obsessing and trying to forget. And she'd been here all along. Not missing. Not gone. Just pregnant. 7 months pregnant. The timeline crashed into him like a physical blow. The ceremony had been 7 months ago. The night in the gardens. The morning he'd woken up alone. Oh God. Henry? Marcus was gripping his arm now. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." "It's her," Henry breathed. His heart was pounding so hard he thought his ribs might crack. "The woman. From the ceremony. That's her." Marcus followed his gaze. Frowned. "The pregnant Omega in the corner? Henry, that's..." He paused. Did the math. Went very still. Oh no. "I have to..." Henry started forward without finishing the sentence. Didn't know what he had to do. Didn't have a plan. Just knew he couldn't stand here staring at her like a coward. Couldn't let her sit there alone, clearly suffering, while he hid behind his title and his fear. Marcus caught his arm. "Wait. Think about this. If that's your child, it's mine." Henry knew it. Bone-deep certainty that had nothing to do with logic and everything to do with the way his wolf was howling inside him, recognizing something essential. "It's mine." "Then you need to be smart about this," Marcus insisted. "The council, the court, everyone is watching. You can't just walk over there and claim her without..." But Henry was already moving. Already cutting through the crowd with the kind of authority that made people part automatically. Already focused on her with such singular intensity that the whispers started before he was halfway across the room. The Alpha King, walking toward the ruined Omega. What was happening? Anna hadn't seen him yet. She was staring at her hands, at her swollen belly, looking like she wished she could disappear into the wallpaper. Looking exactly how she'd looked that night, vulnerable and trying so hard to be brave. And suddenly Henry understood. Understood why she'd run, why she hadn't come forward, why she'd chosen to face this alone rather than find him. She didn't know who he was. Didn't know that the man she'd spent the night with, the one she'd trusted with her body and her vulnerability, was the Alpha King. She thought he was just some wolf, just some stranger who'd used her and left. And he'd let her think that. Had been so drunk, so desperate to be anonymous, that he'd never told her his real name, never told her anything that would help her find him. He'd done this to her. Not intentionally, not maliciously. But the result was the same. She was alone, pregnant with his child, facing ruin and exile and shame, because of him. The crowd had gone silent now, everyone watching, waiting, speculating. He could feel the weight of their attention, the political implications already spinning out in a dozen different directions. But none of that mattered. What mattered was the woman in front of him. The one who was finally looking up, finally seeing him approach, and the recognition that was dawning in her eyes wasn't relief. It was terror, because she knew who he was now. Everyone knew who he was. The Alpha King. And here he was, walking toward her in front of the entire court, about to do something that would change both their lives forever. Henry reached her, stood in front of her while she stared up at him with those wide, frightened eyes, and he made a choice. Not the political choice, not the smart choice, not the choice the council would want or Marcus would recommend, or that made any logical sense. The right choice. He lowered himself. Just slightly. just enough to bring them eye level, close enough that he could smell her wildflowers, exactly like he remembered, now mixed with something sweet and maternal, close enough that he could see the moment she recognized him, really recognized him, not as the Alpha King but as the man from the gardens, the stranger who'd held her, the father of her child. Her lips parted. Shock, confusion, 1,000 questions she couldn't ask. So Henry asked one instead. Quietly, just for her. Do you remember me? She nodded, barely. Her hand moved protectively over her belly. Good, he said. And then, loud enough for the whole room to hear, loud enough to make it real and binding and impossible to take back. Pretend your baby is mine. The ballroom erupted. But Henry only had eyes for Anna. For the way her breath caught, for the tears that suddenly filled her eyes, for the tiny, almost imperceptible nod that felt like absolution. Or maybe damnation. He wasn't sure which yet. His hand was warm, solid, real. I'd forgotten what it felt like to be touched without judgment, to have someone reach for me like I was worth reaching for. My fingers trembled as they met his palm, and I felt the slight squeeze he gave reassurance, maybe, or warning before he pulled me to my feet. Every eye in the ballroom was on us. Hundreds of them, watching, calculating, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. The Alpha King, holding the hand of the disgraced Omega, claiming her child as his own. I could feel the weight of their stares like physical pressure against my skin, could hear the whispers starting again, building from shocked murmurs into something louder, more aggressive. Is he serious? That can't be his child. She's been pregnant for months, and he's never... This is a political move. Has to be. But why her? Why that Omega? Henry didn't let go of my hand. His grip tightened instead, anchoring me, keeping me upright when my legs wanted to give out. His other hand moved to my lower back, protective, possessive, and I felt his wolf rising to the surface, not threatening, just present, making it clear to every wolf in the room that I was under his protection now, that anyone who wanted to hurt me would have to go through him first. Your Majesty. Elder Cornelius appeared at Henry's elbow, his ancient face creased with disapproval and barely concealed panic. Perhaps we should discuss this privately, before any announcements are made. There's nothing to discuss, Henry said, his voice carried across the ballroom, calm, absolute, the voice of a king who didn't explain his decisions. Lady Anna is carrying my child. She will be treated with the respect and protection that position demands. Lady Anna. He'd given me back my title. The one my father had stripped away. Just like that. With a handful of words, I felt something crack open in my chest. Something that had been locked tight for months. But Your Majesty, Cornelius tried again. Are you questioning me, Elder? Henry's tone didn't change. Still calm, still controlled, but there was steel underneath now. A reminder that for all his relative youth, he was still the Alpha King, still the wolf who commanded armies and could crush rebellions with a word. Cornelius went pale. No, Your Majesty. Of course not. Good. Henry's attention shifted back to me. Those gray eyes searching my face. You look exhausted. When did you last eat? The question was so unexpected, so mundane compared to the chaos exploding around us, that I almost laughed. This morning, I think. You think? His jaw tightened. Marcus. His beta materialized from somewhere in the crowd. Tall, dark-haired, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He looked between Henry and me, his expression carefully neutral, but I could see the questions spinning behind his gaze. Get food brought to the small receiving room, Henry ordered. Real food, not the decorative nonsense they're serving here, and clear it of people. We need privacy. Your Majesty, the presentation, Marcus started, can wait. Henry was already moving, already guiding me toward one of the side doors, his hand still firm on my back. Everything can wait. We walked through the ballroom together, past the shocked faces and open mouths, past Sabrina, whose expression had gone from smug satisfaction to incredulous rage, past my father, who looked like he'd been struck by lightning, past all of them, and with every step I felt the whispers following us like a living thing. Did you see his face? He actually looks concerned about her. This can't be real. There's no way. 7 months pregnant. The timeline doesn't even make sense. Where has he been? Maybe he's been keeping her hidden. Secret mistress? Or maybe she trapped him, got pregnant on purpose to secure a position. That last one hit like a fist to the gut, My steps faltered. Henry felt it immediately, his hand pressing more firmly against my back. "Don't," he murmured, low enough that only I could hear. "Don't listen to them. Keep walking." But how could I not listen? How could I ignore the poison they were spitting about me? About us? About my baby? We reached the door. Marcus was already there, holding it open. The small receiving room beyond was empty and quiet and blessedly free of staring eyes. Henry guided me inside, and the door closed behind us with a soft click. The silence was deafening. I pulled away from him, stumbled toward one of the chairs against the wall, and sat down heavily. My hands were shaking. My whole body was shaking. "I can't," I started, but my voice broke. "This is insane. You can't just claim my baby. You can't just. People are going to ask questions. They're going to want proof. They're going to—" "Anna." He was crouching in front of me again. Eye level. Those storm-gray eyes locked on mine. "Breathe. Just breathe." I tried. God, I tried. But my chest was too tight, and there wasn't enough air, and the reality of what had just happened was crushing down on me like a physical weight. "You're the Alpha King," I said, stating the obvious, needing to say it out loud to make it real. "You're the we." "I know," he said quietly. "You know?" I stared at him. "You knew? This whole time you knew it was me?" "No." He shook his head. "Not until tonight. Not until I saw you sitting in that corner. I've been searching for you for 7 months, Anna. 7 months. But I didn't know your last name. Didn't know what pack you belonged to. Didn't know anything except your first name, and that you made me feel—" He stopped, swallowed hard. "I didn't know where to find you. So you were just going to offer to claim some random pregnant woman's baby?" The hysteria was creeping into my voice. I could hear it, couldn't stop it. Out of what? Charity? Guilt? "I was going to offer to protect someone who needed protecting," he said, steady, certain. "Someone who was sitting alone in my ballroom being humiliated by people who should have known better. Someone who looked exactly how I felt that night in the gardens. Lost, vulnerable, like she was drowning and no one cared enough to throw her a rope." His words hit something deep, something raw. "Why?" I whispered. "Why would you do that for a stranger?" "Because you're not a stranger." His hand moved to cover mine where they were twisted together in my lap. "You stopped being a stranger the moment you trusted me enough to let me touch you. The moment you looked at me like I was just a man instead of a crown, and I—" His voice roughened. "I failed you. I left you alone. Let you wake up by yourself thinking you meant nothing. Let you face all of this without me. You didn't know," I said. But the words felt hollow. Because part of me, the angry, hurt part that had spent 7 months feeling used and abandoned, wanted to blame him anyway. "I should have known." His grip on my hands tightened. "I should have found you. Should have made sure you were okay. Should have—" The door opened. Marcus entered carrying a tray of food. Real food, like Henry had ordered. Bread and cheese and sliced meat and fruit that actually looked ripe. My stomach growled despite everything. "Eat," Henry ordered, releasing my hands and stepping back, giving me space. "We can figure out the rest after you've eaten." I wanted to argue, wanted to demand answers and explanations and a time machine that could take us back to before everything got so impossibly complicated. But I was so tired, so hungry, and the food smelled good enough to make my eyes water. So I ate. And while I ate, Henry and Marcus stood by the door speaking in low voices. I caught fragments of their conversation. Damage control, the council, public announcement, security, all the logistics of turning a spontaneous moment of protection into something sustainable, something real. "They're not going to accept this easily," Marcus was saying. "The council wanted you mated to someone with political value, someone who could strengthen alliances. A disgraced Omega with no family support and a scandal attached to her name." "Is carrying my child?" Henry interrupted. "That makes her more valuable than any political alliance." "Does it?" Marcus's voice dropped lower. I had to strain to hear. "Henry, be honest with me. Is that baby actually yours?" The pause that followed felt like it lasted a lifetime. "Yes," Henry finally said, and the certainty in his voice made my chest ache. "I don't need a blood test or a timeline or any kind of proof. I know. The same way I knew she was the woman from the gardens the moment I saw her. It's mine." He believed it, completely, without question, and he had no idea how right he was. I set down the bread I'd been holding. My appetite was suddenly gone. "Henry," I said. Both men turned to look at me. I need to tell you something." The words hung in my throat. "The baby is yours. It was always yours. That night in the gardens, that was us. You and me. We created this child together." That's what I should have said. What I needed to say. The truth that would make everything make sense. But I looked at Henry standing there, still wearing the shock of having found me after 7 months of searching, still processing the fact that I was real and here and pregnant. And I saw something in his eyes that made me hesitate. Relief. Not because he'd found a convenient solution to his succession problem. Not because claiming my baby would satisfy the council's demands for an heir. But because he'd found me. The woman from the gardens. The one who'd made him feel seen. And if I told him the truth right now that he wasn't offering to protect someone else's child but claiming his own, what would that do to this fragile thing between us? Would he believe me? Or would he think I was lying, trying to trap him, using our one night together as leverage now that I knew who he really was? Would he look at me the way everyone else did? With suspicion and disgust, and that particular cruelty reserved for women who dare to need things? "Anna," Henry prompted gently, "what did you want to tell me?" Marcus was watching me with those sharp eyes, assessing, calculating. He didn't trust me. I could see it in every line of his body, could hear it in the way he'd questioned Henry just moments ago. Does it matter if the baby's actually his? That's what he'd really been asking. Does it matter if she's telling the truth? Or is this just another Omega trying to use our king for her own gain? I couldn't tell him. Not now. Not like this. Not when the truth would sound exactly like a convenient lie. I swallowed hard, forced myself to hold Henry's gaze. "I need to know what this means. What you're really offering. Because claiming my baby, claiming me in front of your entire court isn't something you can take back." It wasn't what I'd meant to say. But it was safer. True. Even if it wasn't the whole truth. Henry moved closer, slowly. Like I was something skittish he didn't want to spook. He pulled over another chair and sat down across from me, near enough that our knees almost touched. "You're right," he said. "I can't take it back. Don't want to take it back. But you need to understand what you'd be agreeing to." "I'm listening." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped between them. "If we do this, if we move forward with this, you become mine. Publicly, permanently. The mother of the future heir to the Blackthorn line. That means protection, resources, a place in the palace, everything you and your baby need." But I could hear the unspoken conditions. Nothing in life came free, especially not rescue by an alpha king. "But it also means scrutiny," he continued. "The council will investigate you, your background, your family, every choice you've ever made. They'll look for weaknesses, reasons to discredit you. They'll try to prove you're not worthy of the position." "I'm not," I said quietly. "Worthy, I mean. I'm exactly what they think I am. Disgraced. No family support. Carrying a child I stopped, corrected myself. A child conceived under questionable circumstances. Fuck what they think." The profanity coming from him was startling, raw. "You want to know what I see when I look at you, Anna?" I wasn't sure I did. But I nodded anyway. "I see someone strong enough to walk into that ballroom knowing exactly how she'd be treated and doing it anyway. Someone who chose to keep her child even when it meant losing everything else. Someone who sat in that corner with her head up while the whole world whispered poison about her. His eyes held mine. Fierce. That's not weakness. That's the kind of strength kingdoms are built on. My throat tightened. "You don't know me. Not really. That one night was the most real thing I've experienced in years," he interrupted. "And maybe that makes me a fool. Maybe I'm making a massive mistake. But I watched you tonight, Anna. Before I recognized you. I watched you endure their cruelty with more grace than most of them will show in their entire lives. And I thought, this is someone worth protecting. Someone worth fighting for. Even if the baby isn't yours?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. Testing, probing. Needing to know if this was real, or just another version of the transaction I'd been reduced to. Henry didn't even blink. Especially then. Because that would mean you're doing this for no reason except that it's the right thing to do. That you see someone drowning and you throw them a rope without asking what they can give you in return. God, he really meant it. This impossible, powerful man actually meant every word. "But it will change your life," Marcus interjected from his position by the door. His voice was harder than Henry's, more practical. "You won't have privacy anymore, won't have freedom. Every move you make will be documented, discussed, judged. The nobles who were whispering about you tonight, they'll be doing it for the rest of your life. Only now they'll have to smile while they do it. Marcus, Henry said warningly. No, she needs to hear this. Marcus moved closer. I'm not trying to be cruel, Lady Anna. I'm trying to be honest. The Alpha King's mate, or claimed mate, or whatever we're calling this arrangement, lives in a glass cage. Beautiful, comfortable, but still a cage. Are you prepared for that? Was I? I looked down at my hands, at my swollen belly, at the physical evidence of a child who deserved better than the life I could give them alone. This baby would be born in 3 months, and then what? I'd raise them in that terrible apartment where the pipes froze in winter and the neighbors fought through the walls. I'd work whatever jobs I could find, leaving my newborn with strangers while I cleaned houses or mended clothes. I'd watch my child grow up knowing they were unwanted, a mistake. Or I could accept this, accept Henry's protection, his name, his lie that wasn't really a lie at all. My child could grow up safe, fed, warm, with opportunities I could never provide alone, with a father who'd already proven he'd step up when it mattered, even for a child he thought belonged to someone else. But it meant giving up the truth. Meant living in this strange space between reality and pretense. Meant looking Henry in the eyes every day and knowing I was keeping something from him. Something massive. I need you to promise me something, I said finally, looking up at Henry. Anything. Promise me this isn't about the succession, or the council, or solving your heir problem. I held his gaze. Promise me you're doing this because you actually want to. Because you want us. Not just what we represent. Something shifted in his expression. Softened. The night we met, the real meeting. Not tonight, you asked me what my name was. Do you remember? I nodded. I told you. But not the whole truth. Not the part that mattered. Not the titles and the weight, and all the things that make me the Alpha King instead of just a man. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away. When I didn't, his hand settled over mine. Warm, grounding. I've spent my whole life being what other people need me to be, doing what's expected, what's required, what keeps the kingdom stable and the council satisfied. But when I saw you tonight, sitting in that corner, I didn't think about succession or politics or duty. What did you think about? I thought about how wrong it was that someone like you should be treated like that, and how right it felt when you let me hold you, and how maybe, just maybe, protecting you and your child might be the first truly selfish thing I've done in years. His thumb traced a circle on the back of my hand. So yes, Anna, I promise. This is about you, about us, about the chance that maybe we both deserve something good after all the darkness. The words settled into my chest, took root, and I realized I believed him. Maybe I was a fool. Maybe this would blow up in both our faces. Maybe the truth would come out eventually and destroy whatever fragile thing we were building. But right now, in this moment, I had a choice. Trust him, or don't. Take his hand, or walk away. Save my child, or cling to pride that wouldn't keep us fed, or warm, or safe. Okay, I whispered. Then louder, stronger. Yes, I accept. Henry's entire body seemed to relax, like he'd been holding himself rigid, braced for rejection, and my acceptance had released something locked tight inside him. Thank you, he breathed. I almost laughed, almost pointed out the absurdity of him thanking me for accepting his protection, his resources, his everything. But there was something genuine in his relief, something that told me this mattered to him in ways I didn't fully understand yet. So what happens now? I asked. Marcus answered before Henry could. Now we control the narrative. Make an official announcement before the rumors get too out of hand. Establish Lady Anna in the palace. Provide security. And prepare for the council to lose their collective minds. They're going to investigate me, I said. Not a question. A certainty. Let them. Henry's hand tightened on mine. They won't find anything that matters. And even if they did, even if your past was 10 times worse than whatever they're imagining, it wouldn't change my decision. You can't know that. I can. He leaned closer. Close enough that I could see the flecks of silver in his gray eyes. Close enough that I could smell pine and smoke and that wild thing that made my wolf sing. Because I've already decided, Anna. You're mine now. And I protect what's mine. The possessiveness in his voice should have scared me. Should have raised red flags and warning bells. But instead it felt like safety. Like maybe finally I wouldn't have to fight alone. Yours, I repeated softly, testing the word, the weight of it. If you'll have me. Such a strange reversal. The Alpha King asking permission from a disgraced Omega. The most powerful wolf in the territories offering himself to someone society had decided was worthless. But that's what he was doing. I could see it in his eyes, in the vulnerable set of his shoulders, in the way he waited for my answer like it actually mattered. Like I actually mattered. Yes, I said, and felt the world shift beneath my feet. I'll have you. Henry stood first, extended his hand to help me up, and when I rose awkward, heavily pregnant, still wearing a borrowed dress that didn't fit right, he didn't let go. Ready? He asked quietly. I wasn't, not even close, but I nodded anyway, because ready or not, this was happening. Marcus opened the door. The noise from the ballroom hit us immediately, that thick buzz of hundreds of conversations happening at once, speculation and gossip and shock still rippling through the crowd. But the moment we stepped through that doorway, the moment people saw us together, silence fell like a guillotine blade. Zudden. Complete. Absolute. Henry kept his hand on the small of my back as we walked, not hiding me, not treating me like something shameful to be tucked away in corners. We moved through the center of the ballroom, directly through the heart of the crowd, making sure everyone could see. The Alpha King and me, together. I could feel their eyes tracking us, could hear the sharp intake of breath from a woman in emerald silk as we passed, could see the way nobles stepped back instinctively, creating a path, unsure what else to do. Henry led me to the raised platform at the front of the room where the musicians had been playing earlier. They scattered as we approached, instruments clutched to their chests, eyes wide. Henry helped me up the steps, careful, solicitous, his hand steady when my feet wanted to stumble, and then we stood there. Above everyone, visible to all. My heart was trying to hammer its way out of my chest. I pressed one hand against my belly, feeling the baby move beneath my palm. A flutter, a kick, like they knew something important was happening. Henry raised his free hand. The universal gesture for silence. Though the room was already so quiet, I could hear the chandeliers creaking overhead. I know there's been some confusion tonight, he began. His voice carried across the ballroom with that natural authority that made you want to listen. Speculation. Questions. So let me make things clear. He turned slightly toward me. His hand found mine again, threading our fingers together in a way that was intimate and public all at once. This is Lady Anna, he continued, and she is carrying my child, the future heir to the Blackthorn throne. The silence shattered. Gasps. Shouts. Someone I couldn't see who dropped a glass that exploded against the marble floor. A noble in the front row started coughing violently, like he'd choked on his wine, while his companion pounded on his back. But Henry wasn't finished. I know the timeline may seem unexpected, he said, and I heard the slight edge of dark humor in his voice, like he knew exactly what they were all thinking and found it vaguely amusing. We've kept our relationship private for obvious reasons, but circumstances have changed, and I see no reason to hide what Anna means to me anymore. What I meant to him. Like I was something precious, something chosen, not just a political necessity or a convenient solution. Lady Anna will be moving into the palace, Henry continued over the growing noise. She will be afforded all the protection and respect due to the mother of my heir. And anyone, his voice hardened, took on that edge of command that reminded everyone exactly who they were dealing with. Anyone who treats her with anything less than the honor she deserves will answer to me personally. The threat hung in the air, crystal clear. Touch her and die. Disrespect her and die. Hurt her and die. I saw it register on their faces. The understanding that this wasn't a request or a suggestion. This was a royal decree backed by the full weight of the Alpha King's power and fury. Elder Cornelius pushed his way to the front of the crowd. His ancient face was mottled with rage and panic. Your Majesty, this is highly irregular. The council hasn't been consulted. There are protocols. The protocols can wait until morning. Henry cut him off. Right now, I'm telling you how things are going to be. Lady Anna is under my protection. Our child will be recognized as my legitimate heir, and I expect the council to fall in line accordingly. But the bloodline, the succession, we need proof that... Are you questioning my word, Elder? Henry's voice dropped to something dangerous, something that made my wolf press low and submissive even though the threat wasn't directed at me. Cornelius went pale. No, Your Majesty. Of course not. But surely you understand the position this puts us all in. The other packs, the nobles, they'll want... I don't particularly care what they want. Henry's hand tightened on mine. I care about protecting my family. Everything else is secondary. His family. He'd called us his family. The baby kicked again. Harder this time. Like they'd heard him too. I scanned the crowd, looking for familiar faces in the sea of shock and judgment. Found my father standing near the back, his expression unreadable. Found my stepmother beside him, mouth pursed in disapproval. Found Sabrina. Oh, Sabrina. She was standing front and center, her golden dress suddenly looking less radiant, her perfect smile frozen into something closer to a snarl. Her mate, the wealthy alpha she'd been matched with, had his hand on her arm, trying to pull her back, trying to get her to retreat with some grace. But Sabrina had never been good at losing. "This is ridiculous," she said. Loud enough to carry, loud enough to make heads turn. Everyone knows Anna had no idea who the father was. She said so herself. How convenient that now that the Alpha King needs an heir, suddenly it's his child. The crowd shifted, murmured, some of them nodding. Because Sabrina had a point, didn't she? The timing was suspicious. The whole thing looked like exactly what it was. A powerful man rescuing a desperate woman for reasons that didn't quite add up. Henry's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, I stepped forward. "You're right," I said. Everyone stared at me, including Henry. I could feel his surprise, his tension, his uncertainty about where I was going with this. But I kept my eyes on Sabrina. On the sister who'd drugged me, who'd destroyed my life and smiled while she did it, who'd never expected me to fight back. "You're right that the timing is convenient," I continued. My voice was shaking, but I pushed through it. "And you're right that I've kept the father's identity private, but not because I didn't know." I paused, let that sink in, because he asked me to. It was a lie. A beautiful, necessary lie that Henry and I hadn't planned but that slid into place perfectly. "We met months ago," I said, building the story as I went. "Before the ceremony, we connected. But he's the Alpha King. And I was nobody. We both knew what would happen if word got out. The scandal, the judgment, the way people would assume I was trying to trap him, so we agreed to keep it secret." Henry's hand found my back again, supporting the story, supporting me. "But secrets don't stay hidden forever," I continued, "especially not when they grow inside you. And when I found out I was pregnant, when I realized I couldn't hide it anymore, I made a choice. I chose to protect him, to let everyone think the worst of me rather than drag him into the scandal." Sabrina's face was turning red. "That's not you never—" "You're right, Sabrina. I never told you. I didn't tell anyone." I smiled, small, sad, because I knew exactly what would happen. I knew our father would disown me, knew the pack would shun me, knew I'd lose everything. But I thought I hoped that keeping the secret would at least protect him. "How noble," Sabrina spat, but her voice had lost some of its venom, because the story made sense, fit the timeline, explained the mystery in a way that cast me as loyal rather than promiscuous. "His Majesty made his own choice tonight," I said. "He decided our child's future was more important than the secret. That I shouldn't have to carry this burden alone anymore. And yes, the timing is convenient, but that doesn't make it any less true." The crowd was eating it up. I could see it on their faces. The way the story resonated made them reconsider, made them wonder if maybe, just maybe, they'd judged me too harshly. "Well," someone in the crowd stage whispered. That escalated quickly. A ripple of nervous laughter, the tension breaking just slightly. Henry's hand slid around my waist, pulling me closer. When I looked up at him, there was something in his eyes. Approval, admiration, and something else. Something deeper that made my chest ache. "Any other questions?" he asked the crowd, daring them, challenging them to push back now that the narrative had been established. No one spoke. "Smart. Good." Henry's voice softened. "Now if you'll excuse us, Lady Anna needs rest. It's been a long night." He helped me down from the platform. The crowd parted automatically this time, creating a wide berth. I could feel their eyes still tracking us, still speculating, but the sharp edge of cruelty had dulled. The story had given them something else to think about besides my shame. We were almost to the door when my father stepped into our path. He looked older up close, tired. The lines around his eyes had deepened in the months since I'd seen him. "Anna," he said. Not angry, not warm, just uncertain. "Beta Marcus," Henry said coolly, deliberately using the formal address rather than acknowledging the family connection. "Is there something you need?" My father's eyes flicked between us. "I wanted to apologize." To my daughter. For, he struggled with the words, for not standing by her when she needed me. Too little, too late. But I saw something in his face that looked almost like regret. Apology noted, Henry said before I could respond. His tone made it clear the matter was closed, that my father's opinion no longer mattered. Now, if you'll excuse us. We moved past him, left him standing there with his regret and his too late realizations. And I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no anger, just emptiness where love used to live. But Henry's hand was warm on my back, and the baby was moving beneath my heart. And for the first time in 7 months, I wasn't walking alone. The palace was obscene. That's the word that kept running through my head as Henry led me through corridors wider than my entire apartment had been. Obscene, excessive, beautiful, in a way that made you feel small just by existing near it. Marble everywhere. Gold leaf on the ceiling moldings. Tapestries that probably cost more than I'd earn in 10 lifetimes. Windows so tall they seemed to stretch toward the sky itself, framed by velvet curtains in deep crimson that pooled on the polished floors. This was going to be my home. The thought made me dizzy. The guest wing is to the east, Marcus was saying, walking slightly ahead of us with the brisk efficiency of someone who'd navigated these halls 1,000 times. But we've prepared rooms in the family wing for Lady Anna, close to your Majesty's chambers, for convenience. The pause before that last word was telling. They'd put me close to Henry to maintain the illusion, to make it believable that we were together. A couple. Partners. Not two strangers held together by a lie and a baby neither of us had planned for. Here. Marcus stopped in front of a set of double doors carved with intricate designs, wolves and moons and forests. He pushed them open. I stepped inside, and my breath caught. The room was enormous. A 4-poster bed dominated the center, draped in soft fabrics that looked like they'd feel like clouds. A fireplace large enough to stand in took up one wall, already lit and crackling warmth into the space. Windows overlooked gardens I could just barely see in the darkness. And there a sitting area with cushioned chairs and a small table. A dressing room visible through another doorway. A bathroom that probably had actual hot water that didn't sputter and die halfway through. Is this really for me? The words came out small, odd. All of it, Henry confirmed. He moved into the room, checking things with an attention to detail that surprised me, testing the temperature near the fireplace, making sure the windows were properly sealed against the night chill. If you need anything changed, just say so. Different furniture, different colors, anything. It's perfect, I said, and meant it. It was so far beyond perfect, it felt like a dream I might wake up from any second. Marcus cleared his throat. I'll have servants bring up Lady Anna's things. I don't have things, I interrupted. Not really. Just what I was wearing tonight, and I trailed off. The few possessions I'd managed to keep from my old life were still in that terrible apartment. Books. My mother's necklace, which I was wearing. Some clothes that didn't fit anymore anyway. I travel light. The pity in Marcus's expression made my skin crawl. But Henry just nodded like this was perfectly normal. We'll have appropriate clothing made, he said. Maternity wear. Whatever you need. Marcus, send for the palace seamstress first thing in the morning. Already on the list, Your Majesty. Of course it was. Because Marcus was efficient. Because this was what they did, identified problems and solved them before they became crises. And I was just another problem to be managed. Except Henry was looking at me like I was anything but a problem. You should rest, he said gently. It's late. And you've had a night. That was putting it mildly. What about you? I have meetings. Damage control with the council. Marcus needs to brief the security detail about new protocols. He moved closer. Close enough that I could smell that pine and smoke scent that made my wolf stir. But I'll check on you in the morning. Make sure you're settling in all right. You don't have to. I want to. His hand came up, hesitated, then settled gently on my shoulder. You're not alone anymore, Anna. I need you to understand that. You're not facing this by yourself. My throat tightened. Thank you. He left then. He and Marcus both, closing the doors behind them with a soft click that left me standing in the middle of obscene luxury, wondering what the hell I'd just agreed to. The first week was strange. I barely saw Henry. He was dealing with the aftermath of his announcement, councils, and meetings, and the 1,000 political fires that apparently needed putting out when the Alpha King suddenly claimed a pregnant Omega as his mate. But his presence was everywhere. Fresh flowers appeared in my room every morning. Meals were brought at regular intervals, real food, nutritious food, more than I could possibly eat. A seamstress came and measured me for new clothes, chattering about fabrics and styles while I stood there feeling like a dress-up doll. The palace doctor examined me, declared the baby healthy, strong heartbeat, good positioning, due in approximately 3 months, maybe sooner. He was kind but professional, and he didn't ask questions about the father that I could tell he was dying to ask. Servants appeared to help with things I didn't even know needed helping with, drawing baths, organizing the new clothes as they arrived, bringing me books when they noticed me staring out the windows with nothing to do. It was comfortable, safe, everything I'd needed when I was struggling alone in that apartment, and I hated it. Not the comfort itself, but the isolation. The way I was being kept separate from the rest of palace life. Protected, yes, but also hidden, like something valuable but slightly embarrassing that needed to be locked away in a nice room until it was time to parade it out for official purposes. On the 8th day, I decided I'd had enough. I got dressed one of the new dresses that actually fit, soft blue fabric that accommodated my belly, and walked out of my room, into the corridor, past the guard who straightened in surprise when he saw me but didn't try to stop me. I wandered. The palace was a maze, but I didn't care. I just needed to move, to feel like I existed outside that beautiful cage. I found a library. Enormous, floor-to-ceiling books. The kind of room scholars probably dreamed about. I was running my fingers along leather spines, reading titles, when I heard voices approaching. Still can't believe he actually went through with it. I can. You saw how he looked at her, like she was the only person in the room. But the scandal will blow over. It always does. Give it a few weeks and everyone will find something else to whisper about. 2 women rounded the corner. Nobles, based on their dress. They stopped when they saw me, eyes going wide, then calculating. "Lady Anna," one of them said. "Too sweet, too polite. We didn't expect to see you here." "I like books," I said simply. "Is that allowed?" Of course. It's just we heard you were resting, recovering, the pregnancy and all." The way she said, "the pregnancy," made it sound like a disease. "I'm fine," I said. "The baby's fine, we're both just fine." "Of course you are." The other woman smiled. "His Majesty has been so attentive, making sure you have everything you need." There was a question buried in there. An insinuation. "What exactly are you giving him in return?" "He's very kind," I said neutrally. "Kind? Yes." The first woman exchanged a look with her companion. "We were just wondering, how exactly did you and His Majesty meet? The story at the ball was so romantic, but so vague. They wanted details, wanted something they could pick apart and examine for inconsistencies." "I'm afraid the details are private," I said. "You understand." "Oh, absolutely. We would never pry." "Definitely prying. It's just so unusual. His Majesty has always been so careful about his relationships. And then suddenly you, like you appeared out of nowhere." I felt something cold slide down my spine. This wasn't idle curiosity. This was a test. They were probing, seeing if I'd crack under polite pressure. "Love doesn't follow schedules," I said, borrowing from the story I'd built at the ball. "Sometimes it just happens." "How fortunate for you." The words were congratulatory. The tone was pure poison. I was saved by footsteps. Heavy, purposeful. Henry appeared in the library doorway, still wearing formal attire from whatever meeting he'd been in. His eyes found me immediately, then flicked to the 2 women. "Ladies," he said. Cool. Distant. "I'm sure you have somewhere else to be." It wasn't a suggestion. They curtsied, murmured excuses, fled. Henry waited until they were gone before approaching. "Are you all right?" "Fine." They were just curious. "They were interrogating you." His jaw was tight. "I'll speak to them." "Don't." I touched his arm before I could think better of it. "It'll just make things worse. Make me look weak. Like I need you to fight my battles." "You don't need me to," he agreed. "But that doesn't mean I won't." He looked around the library. "You left your rooms." I got restless. Trapped. I needed to move. Something shifted in his expression. "You should have said something. I would have. You've been busy. I didn't want to bother you with something so trivial." "Anna." He turned to face me fully. "You're not a bother. You're not trivial. If you need something, anything, I want to know about it." The sincerity in his voice made my chest ache. "I just need to feel useful. Feel like I exist for more than this." I gestured to my belly. "I'm not just an incubator." I know that. Do you? The question came out sharper than I intended. Because sometimes it feels like that's all anyone sees. The pregnant Omega, the vessel for the air, not a person. Henry's hand came up to cut my face. The touch was so gentle it made my eyes sting. I see you, he said quietly. Every part of you, not just what you're carrying. Then let me do something, I said. Let me be part of things. I don't care what. I just can't sit in that room anymore waiting for my purpose to be born. He studied my face for a long moment, then nodded. All right, tomorrow. Council meeting. You're coming with me. I what? You wanted to be useful. The council needs to see you, needs to accept that you're part of this now, and you need to see what you're dealing with. His hand dropped from my face. It won't be pleasant. They'll ask hard questions, push boundaries, test you, like those women just did. Worse. Much worse. I squared my shoulders. I can handle it. I know you can. He smiled, small but genuine. That's why I'm bringing you. The council meeting was exactly as awful as promised. 12 elders sitting in a semicircle, all of them ancient, all of them male except for one silver-haired woman who looked at me like I was an insect she wanted to dissect. Henry sat in the center, the alpha's seat, and he'd placed a chair beside him. For me, gentlemen, Elder Sarah, Henry nodded to each of them. I believe you all know Lady Anna. We know of her, Cornelius said, still bitter about being overruled at the ball. But we know very little about her, which is concerning. What would you like to know? I asked before Henry could respond. 12 pairs of eyes swiveled to me, assessing, calculating. Your lineage, another elder said. Your pack standing, your education, your history. My father is Beta Marcus of the Crescent Moon Pack, I said, keeping my voice steady even though my heart was racing. My mother died when I was young. I was educated privately, and my history is my own. That's not an answer, the silver-haired woman Sarah said sharply. We need specifics, references, proof of bloodline quality. Why? The question slipped out. The baby is His Majesty's. That's all that matters for succession. Is it? Cornelius leaned forward. We have only your word, and His Majesty's claim that the child is his. No courtship, no formal mating, no bond that we can verify. Forgive us for being skeptical. Careful, Cornelius. Henry's voice dropped to something dangerous. You're very close to insulting my mate. We're trying to protect the kingdom, Cornelius shot back. If this child isn't actually yours, if this is some scheme, it's not a scheme. I stood, slowly, using my pregnant belly like a shield, like proof. You want to know my history? Fine. I made mistakes. I trusted the wrong people. I ended up pregnant and alone. And yes, I was terrified, desperate. But His Majesty didn't save me out of obligation or political necessity. He saved me because I looked at Henry, found him watching me with those storm-gray eyes, because we already had something real, something that started long before any of you knew I existed. The lie was getting easier, smoother, almost true. A secret relationship, Sarah said skeptically. How convenient. Convenient would have been staying hidden, I countered. Convenient would have been letting me raise this baby alone while he found a more suitable mate. He chose this, chose us. That's not convenience. That's choice. Silence. Then Cornelius. The child, when it's born, you'll submit to bloodline testing. Of course, Henry said before I could respond. Any testing you require, I have nothing to hide. Because he believed it. Really believed the baby was his. And why wouldn't he? The timeline fit. The connection was real. Everything pointed to him being the father. And he was. But he didn't know that yet. And I still didn't know how to tell him. The second poisoning happened 3 weeks after I moved into the palace. 3 weeks of carefully constructed normalcy. Of me attending council meetings and learning politics. Of Henry checking in on me every evening, asking about my day like he actually cared about the answer. Of us building something fragile and real out of a foundation made of lies. I should have known it couldn't last. I was in the library again. It had become my refuge, the one place where I could breathe when Marcus found me. His face was pale, tight with worry. Lady Anna, he said, I need your help. I closed my book. What's wrong? It's His Majesty. He's unwell. The palace doctor is examining him, but he's asking for you. My heart lurched. What happened? We're not sure. He attended a diplomatic dinner tonight, returned to his chambers. But something's wrong. Marcus struggled for words. He's not himself. I was moving before he finished the sentence. Following him through corridors I'd learned by now, past guards who straightened as we passed, upstairs to the royal wing where I'd never actually been. Henry's chambers were even more excessive than mine, but I barely registered the opulence because Henry was sitting on the edge of his massive bed, head in his hands, and even from the doorway I could smell it. Moonherb. The same bitter, floral scent that had been underneath the wine Sabrina gave me. The same drug that had destroyed my control and led to that night in the gardens. Someone had drugged the Alpha King. The palace doctor, an older man named Garrett, looked up when I entered. Lady Anna, thank the goddess. He keeps asking for you. Won't let me treat him properly. I moved closer. Henry's head came up. His eyes were unfocused, pupils blown wide. His skin was flushed, and there was a sheen of sweat on his forehead despite the cool evening air. Anna, he breathed, like my name was a prayer. You're real. You're here. I'm here. I knelt in front of him carefully, my pregnant belly making the position awkward. Henry, what happened? What did you eat? Drink. Wine. His hand reached out, fingers tangling in my hair. The touch was desperate, seeking. At the dinner, Sabrina, she offered a toast. To the future heir. I drank it. Of course it was Sabrina. How much did you drink? Dr. Garrett asked. 1 glass. Maybe 2. I don't. Henry's eyes squeezed shut. Everything's burning. Can't think straight. Can't. It's moon herb, I said. Both Marcus and Dr. Garrett turned to stare at me. I recognized the scent. Someone put moon herb in his wine. That's illegal, Marcus said sharply. Banned substance. If someone poisoned the Alpha King, we deal with that later. I interrupted. Right now we need to help him. Dr. Garrett, is there an antidote? Not exactly. Moon herb has to work its way through the system. All we can do is manage symptoms, keep him hydrated, make sure he doesn't hurt himself or others while the drug runs its course. The doctor looked at Henry with concern. It's going to be a rough night, Your Majesty. How rough? I asked, because I remembered my own night, the fire in my veins, the desperate, clawing need, the way my wolf had gone feral trying to find someone to ease the burn. The herb affects everyone differently, Dr. Garrett said carefully. But in alphas, especially powerful ones, it can trigger aggressive mating instincts. He'll need to be restrained, monitored constantly. We have protocols. No. Henry's voice was rough, raw. No restraints, no guards, just... His eyes found mine again. Just her, please, just Anna. Your Majesty, that's not advisable. Lady Anna is pregnant. If you lose control, I won't hurt her. Henry's hand moved to my face, cupping my cheek with a gentleness that seemed impossible given the drug burning through him. I would never hurt her. Henry, I said softly, you're not in control right now. The herb, it makes you do things you wouldn't normally do. Makes you need things. I know. His thumb traced my cheekbone. I know what it does, Anna. Because I know what it did to you. The words hung in the air. He knew. Somehow he knew. About the moon herb. About what had really happened that night in the gardens. Marcus told me, Henry continued, his words slightly slurred. After the ball, after I claimed you, he investigated your story. Found witnesses who saw Sabrina give you wine before the ceremony. Found the healer she bought moon herb from. His jaw clenched. I know someone drugged you. Know that night wasn't entirely your choice. And I've been trying to figure out how to tell you that I know without making you relive it. Tears burned my eyes. You knew, this whole time? I suspected. Marcus confirmed it last week. And I've been so angry, Anna, so furious that someone did that to you, that they took your choice away, that you had to live with the consequences while they... He stopped, drew a shaky breath. And now someone did the same thing to me. Ironic, isn't it? It's not ironic. It's calculated. I looked at Marcus. This was Sabrina. Had to be. She drugged me to ruin me. Now she's drugging Henry to what? Ruin him? Discredit him? Or to position herself? Marcus said grimly. If the Alpha King is incapacitated, if he's found in a compromised position, if she can claim he stopped, glanced at me. It doesn't matter. We need to contain this. Quietly. Everyone out, I said suddenly. Dr. Garrett, Marcus, the guards. Everyone except Henry and me. Lady Anna, Dr. Garrett started. He's asking for me, and I've been through this. I know what he's feeling right now, what he needs. I met Marcus's eyes. You said you trust him not to hurt me. Do you also trust me to keep him safe? Marcus studied me for a long moment, then nodded. I'll be right outside. Any sign of trouble, I'll call, I promise. They left, reluctantly, leaving me alone with the drugged Alpha King, who was looking at me like I was the only solid thing in a world that had gone liquid and strange. You shouldn't be here, Henry said, but his hand was still on my face, still holding on. You should let them restrain me, lock me away until this passes. Like they did to you? I asked gently. Did they lock you up that night? Put you in chains? No, I was just drunk. Stupid. Looking for oblivion at the bottom of a bottle because being king was... He stopped. Shook his head like he was trying to clear it. I wasn't drugged. Just reckless. You were hurting, I said. And someone took advantage. Just like someone took advantage of me. And now someone's trying to do it again. I helped him lie down. Pulled off his boots. Loosened the collar of his shirt so he could breathe easier. He watched me with those storm-gray eyes that were clearer than they should be given how much moon herb was in his system. How are you fighting it? I asked. I couldn't. The drug made me. I had no control. Because I know what I'm fighting for. His hand found mine. Squeezed. I know you're pregnant. Know you're vulnerable. Know that if I lose control now, if I do anything to hurt you or scare you, I'll never forgive myself. That's stronger than any drug. Henry, stay. It wasn't a command. It was a plea. Please, I don't trust myself alone. Don't trust that I won't do something stupid. But with you, here, with you close, I can focus on protecting you instead of fighting the burn. So I stayed. I climbed onto the bed beside him, awkward with my belly, clumsy with uncertainty, and let him curl around me. His arm draped carefully over my waist, his face pressed into my hair, his breathing ragged but controlled. Tell me something, he murmured. Something real. Something that has nothing to do with politics or councils or any of this mess. Like what? Anything. Your favorite food. The book you're reading. What you want to name the baby. Just talk to me. Keep me here. So I did. I told him about the library. About the novel I'd started that afternoon, something ridiculous and romantic that I'd never admit to enjoying in daylight. I told him I'd been craving strawberries but was too embarrassed to ask for them specifically. Told him I'd been thinking about names but couldn't decide on anything that felt right. And he listened. Held me. Fought the drug burning through his system with nothing but sheer stubborn will and the determination not to hurt me. Sometime in the early morning hours, the shaking stopped. His breathing evened out. He fell into genuine sleep with his arm still around me and his wolf finally quiet. I should have left then. Should have slipped out and gone back to my own rooms before anyone saw. But I was tired. So tired. And he was warm. And for once, for the first time since this whole thing started, I felt safe. So I stayed. And when morning light filtered through the windows, when Henry stirred and his eyes opened and he realized where we were, what we'd done, I saw something shift in his expression. Not regret. Not horror. Recognition. Like he'd been looking for something, and finally found it sleeping in his arms. Anna, he said softly. Thank you. For what? For seeing me. Not the king. Not the title. Just me. The way you did that first night. His hand moved to my face again. But this time there was no drug fueling the touch. Just choice. Just him. I think I've been falling for you since the gardens. I just didn't know how to tell you. My heart stopped. Henry, I know this is complicated. I know we're building this on lies and necessity and political pressure. But last night what you did for me, that wasn't obligation. That was care. And I need you to know that what I feel for you, it's not about the baby or the heir or any of the rest of it. He paused, searching my face. It's about you. And I realized with terrifying clarity that I felt the same way. That somewhere between the ballroom and the council meetings and the quiet evenings where he'd ask about my day, I'd stopped seeing the Alpha King and started seeing just Henry. The man I'd spent one night with. The father of my child. The person who fought moon herb with nothing but will, because he refused to hurt me. I'm falling too, I whispered. And it terrifies me. Why? Because the truth was still sitting between us. Because he didn't know the baby was already his. Because when he finally found out, when the blood tests came back after the birth, would he think I'd been lying this whole time? Using him? But I couldn't say any of that. So I just said, because I don't know how to do this, how to be what you need. You're already exactly what I need, he said, and kissed my forehead. Gentle, reverent. You always have been. Things changed after that night. Not in obvious ways. Henry still had his duties. I still attended councils and endured the whispers and learned how to be whatever the palace needed me to be. But there was something different between us now. Something warmer, more real. He found excuses to be near me. Would appear in the library with books he thought I'd like. Would ask my opinion on matters that had nothing to do with me. Would reach for my hand when we walked through the palace gardens, his touch casual but constant, like he needed the connection. And I let him. God help me. I let him get closer even though I knew the truth was going to destroy this fragile thing we were building. But there were still moments, quiet moments, when he thought I wasn't looking where I'd catch him, staring at nothing with this expression on his face. Lost, searching, like he was looking for someone who wasn't there. It took me 2 weeks to work up the courage to ask about it. We were in his study. He'd asked me to join him while he worked through correspondence, said he liked having me near, that it made the tedious work more bearable. I was reading in the chair by the window, one hand absently rubbing my belly where the baby was doing acrobatics. Henry, I said, can I ask you something? He looked up from the letter he was writing. Always. That night, the ceremony, the gardens. I watched his expression shift. Careful. Guarded. Do you remember it? Really remember it? Some of it. He set down his pen. Why? Because sometimes you get this look, like you're searching for something, someone. I forced myself to hold his gaze. Are you looking for her? The woman from that night? The silence stretched too long. Anna, it's okay if you are, I interrupted. Even though it wasn't okay. Even though the thought of him looking for some phantom version of me, the version he'd met that night before he knew who I was, made my chest ache. I just need to know. Henry stood, moved around his desk, came to kneel in front of my chair the way he had at the ball. I'm not looking for her, he said carefully. I'm trying to reconcile her with you. What do you mean? That night I was drunk, hurting, looking for oblivion, and I found you instead. Or I found someone, a woman who made me feel seen, who touched me like I was precious, who gave me one perfect night where I didn't have to be the king. His hand settled on my knees. Gentle. Grounding. And then she was gone. And I spent months trying to find her, trying to get back that feeling of... He stopped, struggled for words, of being understood. And then you found me in the ballroom, I said quietly. And I thought I hoped you were her, that same woman. But you're different, Anna. You're harder, more guarded, which makes sense given what you've been through. But sometimes I catch glimpses of her in you. In the way you look at me when you think I'm not paying attention. In the way you touch me when you're half asleep. And I wonder if I'm really the same person, I finished. If you even remember that night the way I do. His thumb traced circles on my knee. If it meant anything to you. Or if it was just... It meant everything, I said. Too fast, too honest. That night meant everything to me, Henry. You made me feel... My voice broke. Like I mattered. Like I was worth something. Even if it was just for a few hours. Then why do you pull away? The question was raw, vulnerable. Why do you let me get close and then retreat? Why does it feel like you're holding something back? Because I was. Because the truth was a bomb waiting to go off. Because I didn't know how to tell him that the woman he'd been searching for was me all along. That the baby he was claiming wasn't some other man's child, it was his. Had always been his. I'm scared, I admitted. Because that much was true. Scared this isn't real. Scared you're going to wake up one day and realize you made a mistake. That I'm not worth the trouble. Anna, the study door opened. Marcus walked in without knocking. His face set in that expression that meant something had gone wrong. Your Majesty, we have a situation. Henry stood, instantly shifting into king mode. What kind of situation? Lady Sabrina is demanding an audience. She's in the receiving hall with witnesses. Claims she has evidence of... Marcus's eyes flicked to me. Evidence regarding Lady Anna's past. Says the council needs to hear it immediately. My blood went cold. Henry's jaw clenched. What kind of evidence? How? She won't say. But she's making a scene. The nobles are gathering. If we don't address this now, the rumors... Fine. Henry's voice was ice. We'll hear whatever lies she's prepared. But Anna stays with me. Whatever Sabrina says, she says to both of us. We walked to the receiving hall together. Henry's hand was on my back, protective, possessive, and I could feel the tension radiating off him. Marcus walked slightly ahead, his own body language screaming danger. The receiving hall was packed. Nobles lined the walls, whispering behind their hands. And there, in the center, like a queen holding court, stood Sabrina. She looked radiant. Of course she did. Golden and glowing, and so convinced of her righteousness it made me want to scream. "Your Majesty," she said, curtsying. "Thank you for seeing me. I know this is unorthodox, but I couldn't stay silent any longer. Not when the kingdom's future is at stake." "Get to the point," Henry said coldly. "Of course." Sabrina's smile was all sympathy and false concern. "It's about my sister, about the child she's carrying. You see, I have proof, actual proof that the baby isn't yours." The room exploded into whispers. Henry's hand tightened on my back. "What proof?" "Witness testimony, from the night of the ceremony." Sabrina gestured to someone in the crowd. A man stepped forward, middle-aged, nervous. "This is Thomas. He's a healer from our pack. He treated Anna the morning after the ceremony. Tell them what you told me, Thomas." The healer swallowed hard. "Lady Anna came to me, said she'd woken up in the gardens, didn't remember much of the night. Asked for," he looked miserable, "asked for a morning after tonic. Said she'd been with someone but didn't know who. It was true, all of it. I had gone to a healer, had asked for herbs to prevent pregnancy, but they hadn't worked, or I'd been too late, or the goddess had other plans. You see?" Sabrina's voice rang out. She didn't know who the father was, admitted it herself. "So how can she now claim the baby is yours, Your Majesty? How convenient that she discovered the father's identity only after you offered protection." The whispers grew louder, more vicious. I could feel the judgment pressing in from all sides. "Anna," Henry said quietly, "is this true?" I wanted to lie, wanted to deny it, but I'd already built so many lies between us. What was one more? "Yes," I whispered. "I went to a healer. I was scared, confused. I couldn't." "She's lying to you," Sabrina pressed. "She's been lying this whole time. That baby isn't yours. She's using you, using the kingdom, and you're too blinded by whatever this is to see it." Henry went very still, the kind of still that came before violence. "Marcus," he said, voice calm, deadly, "escort Lady Sabrina out. Now, before I do something I'll regret." "Your Majesty, you can't just," Sabrina started. "I can and I am. You come into my home, make accusations against my mate, produce a witness who proves nothing, except that Anna was scared and alone and trying to protect herself." He turned to face the crowd. "The testimony you've heard changes nothing. Anna sought help after a traumatic experience. That doesn't make her a liar. It makes her a survivor." "But the timing," someone called out. "The timing is irrelevant," Henry snapped. "The child is mine. I know it. I feel it. And I don't need blood tests or council approval or any of your validation to know the truth." He believed it so completely, so absolutely. And standing there watching him defend me, defend us, I realized I couldn't keep lying. Not anymore. Not when he was putting everything on the line for a truth he didn't even know was real. "Henry," I said, "stop." He turned to look at me, eyes still blazing with protective fury. "Everyone out," I said loudly. "Now, I need to speak with His Majesty. Alone." "Anna," Marcus started. "Now," I repeated. "Please." They left, slowly, reluctantly, but they left, until it was just Henry and me in that massive receiving hall, standing in the wreckage of Sabrina's attempted coup. "What are you doing?" Henry asked quietly. "Something I should have done weeks ago." I took a breath, steadied myself. "The baby is yours, Henry. Actually yours. From that night in the gardens. That was us. You and me. We created this child together." He stared at me, processing. "What?" "I'm the woman you've been searching for. The one from the ceremony. It was always me." The words were tumbling out now. Desperate. Urgent. "I didn't know who you were. You didn't tell me your real name. And when I woke up alone I thought you were just some wolf who'd used me and left. So I went to the healer. Tried to prevent pregnancy. But it didn't work. And when I found out I was carrying your baby, I had no way to find you. No way to tell you. Anna. And then you showed up in that ballroom. Offered to claim a baby you thought belonged to someone else. And I realized you were him. the man from the gardens, the father. But if I told you then, if I said the baby was yours, you'd think I was lying, think I was trying to trap you. So I stayed quiet. Let you think you were being noble, being selfless. When really, my voice broke. When really you were just claiming what was already yours. The silence that followed was crushing. Henry's face had gone pale. You're telling me this whole time the baby I've been claiming as a lie is actually yours. Yes, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I was scared and stupid, and I pressed my hand to my belly. I thought keeping the secret would protect both of us. But it's just been hurting you, making you doubt, making you search for someone who was right in front of you all along. He moved suddenly, crossed the space between us in 3 strides. His hands came up to frame my face, tilting it up so I had to look at him. Say it again, he demanded. Tell me again. The baby is yours. We made this baby together that night in the gardens. You're the father, the real father, not the pretend one. He kissed me, hard, desperate, his mouth claiming mine with an intensity that stole my breath and made my knees weak. His hands slid into my hair, holding me steady while he kissed me like I was air, and he'd been drowning. And I kissed him back, because I'd been wanting this for weeks, months, since that first night when he'd made me feel seen, since the ballroom when he'd offered salvation, since every quiet moment when he'd proven he was more than his crown. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. Mine, he said roughly. The baby is mine. You're mine. This whole time. He laughed, sharp and disbelieving. God, Anna, do you have any idea how long I've been looking for you? 7 months, I whispered. Same as me. We're idiots, he said. But he was smiling. Really smiling. The kind of smile that transformed his whole face. Complete idiots who've been dancing around each other while the truth was right there. I'm sorry, I said again. I should have told you sooner. Should have trusted me. His forehead dropped to mine. But I understand why you didn't. I understand all of it, Anna, and none of it changes how I feel about you. How do you feel about me? Like I finally found something I didn't know I'd lost. His hands were gentle now, reverent. Like the goddess put you in my path twice and I'll be damned if I let you slip away again. I'm not going anywhere, I promised. Never again. He kissed me again. Softer this time, sweeter, and I felt something settle in my chest, something that had been restless and uncertain since that morning in the gardens. We weren't built on lies anymore. We were built on truth. And that changed everything. We stood there in the empty receiving hall, foreheads pressed together, breathing the same air, and I felt the weight of 7 months of secrets finally lift off my shoulders. But Henry had gone very still. The moon herb, he said quietly. Sabrina gave you moon herb before the ceremony. Yes. And that's why... He pulled back to look at me. Really look at me. That's why you were in the gardens. Why you were impaired. Why you couldn't remember clearly. I remembered enough, I said. I remembered you, the way you made me feel. But yes, the details were blurred. The drug made everything feel necessary. Urgent. Like my wolf would claw her way out of my skin if I didn't. I stopped. Heat rising in my cheeks. Anna. His voice had changed. Gone rough with something I couldn't identify. I was drunk that night. Not drugged, but drunk. Impaired. And you were drugged. Neither of us was in a position to truly consent. We both chose to be there, I countered. Both chose each other. Did we? His hands dropped from my face. Or did the moon herb choose for you? Did the whiskey choose for me? Because if I'd been sober, if I'd realized you were impaired, I never would have touched you. Never would have. Don't. I grabbed his shirt. Held on. Don't you dare rewrite that night. Don't turn it into something ugly when it's the only beautiful thing I had for months. You didn't take advantage of me, Henry. We found each other, both broken. Both looking for something. And yes, we were impaired. Yes, it was messy. But it was real. Real, he repeated, like he was testing the word. You think what we had was real, don't you? He looked at me for a long moment, then reached up to cover my hands where they were still fisted in his shirt. I think I fell for you that night. Whoever you were, whatever you needed. I fell and I didn't even realize it until I woke up alone and felt like I'd lost something essential. His grip tightened. And then I spent 7 months searching, trying to find that feeling again, that sense of being understood, being seen. And all this time, I was here, pregnant with your baby, thinking you'd abandoned me. I would never. He stopped, corrected himself. I did abandon you. Not intentionally. But the result was the same. You woke up alone, scared, dealing with consequences you shouldn't have had to face by yourself. You didn't know. I should have known. His voice was fierce now, angry, but not at me. I should have stayed. Should have been there when you woke up. Should have made sure you were okay. Instead, I just what? Walked away like it didn't matter? Like you didn't matter? You were drunk. You probably didn't think. That's exactly the problem. I didn't think. I was so wrapped up in my own misery, my own need to escape being the king for one night, that I didn't consider the woman I was with might need more than a few hours of oblivion. He pulled away, started pacing. And then Sabrina drugged you, specifically targeted you with moon herb, knowing what it would do, knowing you'd be vulnerable, and I... His fist slammed into his palm. I played right into her hands. I was the convenient wolf in the gardens, the unnamed stranger who could be blamed for ruining you. I'd never thought about it that way, never considered that Sabrina's plan might have been that sophisticated, that calculated. She wanted me gone, I said slowly. Wanted me disgraced so she could be the only daughter, the only option for political marriages and alliances. If I was ruined, if I was pregnant and abandoned, I'd never be competition again. And she almost succeeded. Henry stopped pacing, looked at me with something like horror. If I hadn't recognized you at that ball, if I hadn't been there that night, you'd still be alone. Still be facing this by yourself. Your father disowned you. Your pack rejected you. The healer Thomas said you came to him desperate, scared, trying to prevent a pregnancy that had already taken root. His voice cracked. I did that to you. My choices. My recklessness. I'm the reason you lost everything. No. I moved toward him, made him look at me. Sabrina did that. She drugged me. She set this in motion. You were trying to survive the same way I was. We're both victims here, Henry. Both casualties of her cruelty. I'm the Alpha King, he said bitterly. I'm not supposed to be anyone's victim. Being powerful doesn't make you immune to being hurt, to being used. I touched his face, made him focus. And maybe that night was messy. Maybe we were both impaired and making questionable decisions. But it gave us this baby. This beautiful, impossible child that we both already love. And it gave us each other. That can't be wrong. It can't be. What if you regret it? The question was so quiet I almost didn't hear it. What if someday you look at me and remember that I'm the reason your life fell apart? That you lost your family, your home, your reputation because I couldn't keep my hands to myself? Henry, I waited until he met my eyes. I don't regret you. I regret how we started. I regret the moon herb and the whiskey and all the things that made that night less than what it should have been. But I don't regret you. I don't regret this baby. And I definitely don't regret that you found me again. That you offered me protection when you thought I needed it. That you fought for me even when you thought the baby wasn't yours. The baby is mine, he said. Like he was reminding himself. Our baby. We made this together. We did. And you want this? Want me? Even knowing how it started? Even knowing what it cost you? I want you, I confirmed. Even with all the mess and complications and trauma, I want you. Something broke in his expression, shattered and reformed into something softer, more vulnerable. I don't deserve you. Probably not. I agreed. But you're stuck with me anyway. He laughed, sharp and surprised. Then pulled me close, careful of my belly, always so careful, and just held me, his face buried in my hair, his arms wrapped around me like I was something precious he'd almost lost. We need to deal with Sabrina, he murmured. She tried to poison me, drugged you, attempted to discredit you in front of the entire court. She can't get away with this. What can you do? She's nobility. Her mate is an alpha from another territory. You can't just... I can have her investigated. Officially. For the moon herb purchase, if nothing else. That substance is banned for a reason. If we can prove she bought it, used it, she'll face consequences. Exile at minimum. Criminal charges if the council pushes for it. Her mate won't like that. Her mate can file a formal complaint if he has an issue with his wife being held accountable for attempted assassination. Henry's voice was cold, final. But I'm not letting her walk away from this. Not after what she did to you, to us. I felt a fierce satisfaction at his words, at the promise of justice. For months I'd carried the weight of what Sabrina had done, unable to prove it, unable to make anyone listen. But Henry believed me. Henry was going to make sure she answered for it. "Thank you," I whispered. "For what?" "For believing me. For not thinking I made it up or exaggerated or deserved it somehow." His arms tightened. "I will always believe you, Anna. Always. You're my mate, my partner, the mother of my child, and anyone who hurts you." He didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. The promise of violence was clear enough. We stood there for a long moment, just holding each other, processing everything that had been revealed, everything that had changed. "We should probably tell people," I said finally. "Marcus, the council, they need to know the truth." "They will. But first," he pulled back to look at me. "First, I need to ask you something important." "Okay. When the baby is born, after the blood tests confirm what we already know, when there's no more doubt or speculation or political maneuvering." He took my hands, held them carefully. "Will you let me court you? Properly this time. The way I should have done from the beginning?" I blinked. "Court me? I know we're doing everything backward. Baby first, relationship second. But I want to do this right, Anna. Want to give you the romance you deserve. The choice you should have had before you ended up pregnant and trapped with me." "I'm not trapped," I protested. "You're here because I claimed you. Because you needed protection. Because the alternative was raising our baby alone in poverty." His thumbs stroked the backs of my hands. "I want you to be here because you want to be. Because you chose me. Not because circumstances forced your hand." "I do choose you," I said. "I already chose you. That night in the gardens. At the ball when I accepted your offer. Every day since when I could have left but didn't. I've been choosing you, Henry. Over and over. Then let me choose you back. Publicly, completely. With the full courtship rituals and ceremony and all the things that prove to everyone, including you, that this is real." He raised my hands to his lips, kissed my knuckles. "Let me show you that you're not just the mother of my heir. You're my mate. My chosen one. The woman I want beside me for the rest of my life." My throat was tight. Yes, I'll let you court me. Even though it's completely backward and ridiculous and—" He kissed me quiet. And I kissed him back with 7 months of longing and relief and love I was finally allowed to feel. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "I love you," he said simply. "I think I've loved you since that first night. I just didn't know how to say it until now." "I love you too," I whispered. "Even when I hated you, even when I thought you'd abandon me, I loved you." "Never again," he promised. "You're never facing anything alone again. Whatever comes next, we face it together." "Together," I agreed. And for the first time since I'd woken up in that garden, I believed it. We weren't built on lies anymore. We were built on truth. And truth, I was learning, was strong enough to weather any storm. The formal investigation into Sabrina took 3 days. 3 days of testimony from healers, merchants, pack members who'd witnessed things they'd been too afraid to report. 3 days of Marcus methodically building a case that even Sabrina's mate couldn't defend against. By the end of it, the evidence was undeniable. Sabrina had purchased moon herb from an illegal trader, had administered it to me with the explicit intent of causing my ruin, had attempted to do the same to Henry weeks later when her first plan hadn't destroyed me the way she'd hoped. The council had no choice but to act. Sabrina was stripped of her title. Her mating bond was dissolved. Her alpha mate wanted nothing to do with a woman who'd tried to poison a king. She was exiled from Packlands with nothing but the clothes on her back and a permanent mark on her record that would follow her wherever she tried to go. My father protested, tried to argue for leniency, but Henry was unmoved, cold, absolute. "Your daughter attempted to assassinate the Alpha King," he said in front of the full council. "She drugged and ruined her own sister out of jealousy. She's lucky exile is all she's facing. In previous generations, the punishment would have been execution." My father had no response to that. And my stepmother, she didn't even try to defend Sabrina, just sat there with her mouth pressed into a thin line, finally seeing her golden daughter for what she really was. I should have felt satisfaction, vindication, but mostly I just felt tired, sad, because this was my family. However broken, however toxic, they were still the people I'd grown up with, and watching them fracture completely was harder than I'd expected. Henry found me in the gardens the evening after Sabrina's sentencing. I was sitting on a stone bench, one hand on my belly where the baby was restless, the other holding the letter my father had sent. An apology. Too late and too little, but an apology nonetheless. "You okay?" Henry asked, settling beside me carefully. I don't know. I folded the letter. I thought I'd feel better, seeing Sabrina punished, getting justice, but I just feel empty. That's normal. His arm came around my shoulders. Warm, grounding. Closure doesn't always feel the way we expect it to. My father wants to reconcile. Says he realizes he was wrong, that he let his anger cloud his judgment. I laughed bitterly. 7 months too late. What do you want to do? I don't know. Part of me wants to forgive him, to have my father back, but another part, I pressed the letter against my chest. Another part remembers how it felt when he disowned me, when he chose Sabrina over me without even questioning her story. I don't know if I can trust him again. You don't have to decide right now, Henry said gently, or ever. Whatever you choose, I'll support it. If you want him in our lives, he can be. If you don't, he can't. Your choice. Your choice. Those words meant more than he probably realized. Henry, I said, can I ask you something? Always. If I hadn't been pregnant, if that night in the gardens had just been two wolves finding comfort in each other and nothing more, would you still want me? Or is this just about the baby? He was quiet for a moment, thinking, and I appreciated that he didn't rush to reassure me with easy lies. I can't separate you from the baby, he said finally, because the baby is part of you, part of us, part of what brought us back together. But, he turned to face me, if you'd walked into that ballroom not pregnant, just alone and hurting, and I'd recognized you as the woman from the gardens, yes, I still would have wanted you, still would have crossed that room, still would have offered you whatever protection or comfort or connection you'd let me give. You can't know that. I can, because I've been looking for you for 7 months, Anna. Not for a baby, not for an heir. For you, for the woman who made me feel like Henry instead of His Majesty, for the person who saw past the crown to the man underneath. His hand found my face, cupped my cheek. The baby is a gift, a miracle I didn't know I wanted. But you're the prize, the treasure. The thing I've been searching for without realizing it was you all along. Tears stung my eyes. I love you. I love you too. He kissed my forehead. Which is why we're going to do this properly. Starting tomorrow. Do what properly? Court you. The way you deserve. The way I should have done from the beginning. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. This is just the start. I stared at the box. Henry, open it. Inside was a ring. Simple silver band with a moonstone set in the center. Not ostentatious. Not the kind of royal jewelry that screamed wealth and power. Just beautiful. Personal. Perfect. It was my mother's, he said quietly. She gave it to my father during their courtship. Said the moonstone reminded her of the night they met under the full moon. I want you to have it. Not as a claim, not as a brand, but as a promise that I'm choosing you. Every day. For the rest of our lives. I couldn't speak. Could barely breathe. He took the ring from the box and slid it onto my finger. It fit perfectly. There's going to be a ceremony, he continued. A formal courtship announcement. In 2 weeks, after you've had time to rest and prepare, I'll present you to the kingdom not as my convenient solution or political necessity, but as my chosen mate. The woman I love. The future queen. Henry, I can't be. You already are, he interrupted. You've been attending councils, learning politics, standing beside me when I face the nobles. You're already my partner, Anna. This just makes it official. What if I'm terrible at it? What if I fail? Then we fail together. He took my hands. But I don't think you will. I've watched you, Anna. Watched you face down the council when they questioned you. Watched you endure gossip and judgment with more grace than most nobles show in their entire lives. Watched you protect our child even when it cost you everything. You're already stronger than half the queens in our history. That's a low bar, I said. But I was smiling. Couldn't help it. Maybe. But you clear it by miles. He pulled me closer. Say yes. Say you'll let me present you properly. Say you'll be my mate and my queen and my partner in everything. I looked down at the ring on my finger, at the moonstone catching the fading light, at the promise it represented. And I thought about that night in the gardens. 2 broken wolves finding each other in the darkness, making something beautiful out of pain and loneliness and desperate need. I thought about the ballroom. Henry crossing to me when everyone else had turned away, offering protection when he thought I was carrying another man's child. I thought about the weeks since, the gentle care, the fierce protection, The way he'd fought the moon herb with nothing but will because he refused to hurt me. The way he'd believed me about Sabrina. The way he'd chosen me. Over and over. Yes, I said. Yes, to all of it. The ceremony 2 weeks later was excessive, in the way all royal events were excessive. Flowers everywhere. Music that made my chest ache. Nobles in their finest dress, watching with expressions that ranged from genuine happiness to barely concealed resentment. But I barely noticed any of it, because Henry was beside me, his hand in mine, his eyes on me like I was the only person in the room. And when the elder conducting the ceremony asked him to speak his intentions, his voice rang clear and certain. "I choose Anna," he said, "not out of duty, not out of political necessity, but because she makes me better, makes me want to be better. She's my partner, my equal, the woman I want beside me for the rest of my days. And I will spend every one of those days proving she made the right choice in accepting me." Then it was my turn. And I looked out at the crowd at my father standing in the back looking miserable, at the nobles who'd whispered about me, at Marcus who'd become an unexpected friend and spoke my own truth. "I choose Henry," I said. "Not because he's the Alpha King, not because he offered me protection when I needed it, but because he sees me, really sees me. And because when I look at him, I see not just a king, but the man who held me through the worst night of his life and trusted me to keep him safe. I choose him, every day, for all the days we have." The elder blessed our courtship, declared us officially bonded, and the crowd erupted into applause. But all I could focus on was Henry, on the way he was looking at me, like I'd just given him the world. "My queen," he murmured, kissing my hand. "My mate, my love." "Not queen yet," I corrected. "Just your very pregnant partner who desperately needs to sit down." He laughed, led me to the chairs that had been prepared, and we sat together while the celebration continued around us. 3 months later, I gave birth to a daughter. She was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a head full of dark hair and her father's gray eyes. She came into the world screaming her displeasure and didn't stop until Henry held her, murmuring soft words in a language I didn't recognize. Ancient wolf tongue, the language of our ancestors. "What are you saying to her?" I asked, exhausted but happy. "I'm telling her she's loved, protected, that she's the future of our line and the best thing her father ever helped create." He looked at me. "What should we name her?" We'd discussed names, hundreds of them. But standing there looking at our daughter, our miracle, our proof that even the messiest beginnings could lead to something beautiful, only one felt right. "Luna," I said, "for the moon that brought us together." "Luna," Henry repeated, testing it, then smiling. "Perfect, just like her mother." The blood tests came back 3 days later, confirming what we already knew. Luna was Henry's biological daughter, the true heir to the Blackthorn line. The council had no choice but to accept it. Accept me, accept us. And when they formally crowned me as queen 6 months later, Luna sleeping peacefully in her father's arms while I wore a crown that felt too heavy and too right all at once, I looked out at the kingdom that had become mine and felt something settle in my chest. I wasn't the disgraced Omega anymore. I wasn't the convenient solution or the political necessity. I was the queen, the mate, the mother of the heir. I was chosen, and I had chosen back, and that was everything. Luna was 3 months old when I found Henry standing in the nursery at 2 a.m, holding a diaper like it was a bomb. "It has tabs," he said. "Not to me, just to the universe. Why are there so many tabs?" I leaned against the doorframe, trying not to laugh. The Alpha King, ruler of 12 packs, commander of armies, completely defeated by infant clothing. "You put it under her," I said. "Then fasten the tabs on the sides." "I know that," he sounded offended. "I've done this before." "Have you?" "Yes. At least, I think I have." He looked down at Luna, who was lying on the changing table, making little cooing sounds and waving her fists. "You're making this harder than it needs to be, little moon." Luna blew a spit bubble at him. "See? She's mocking me. My own daughter is mocking me. She's 3 months old, Henry. She doesn't mock. She just exists and occasionally spits up on expensive clothes." "She spit up on Elder Cornelius last week," Henry said, and he sounded proud. Right in the middle of his speech about fiscal responsibility. Perfect timing. I did laugh then. because Cornelius had deserved it, had been droning on for 20 minutes about budget allocations while Luna squirmed in my arms. And then, perfect projectile accuracy, she decorated his formal robes with partially digested milk. Henry had barely hidden his grin during the resulting chaos. "You're stalling," I pointed out. "The diaper isn't going to put itself on. I'm strategizing. It's a diaper, not a battle plan. Everything is a battle plan if you think about it long enough." But he was moving now, carefully sliding the diaper under Luna, fastening the tabs with the intense concentration he usually reserved for treaty negotiations. "There, see? Perfect." It was on backward. "Henry." "What?" "The tabs go in the back." He stared down at his handiwork, then at me. "Are you sure?" "Very sure. This seems unnecessarily complicated." But he was already unfastening it, starting over. Luna kicked her legs helpfully, nearly catching him in the face. "I've commanded armies, Anna. Entire armies. Thousands of warriors who follow my every order. But this tiny human has me completely outsmarted. That's because warriors don't pee on you mid-change. Luna wouldn't. She did. Right then. Perfect timing. Again." Henry jumped back with a yelp that probably woke half the palace. "She did, she just—" "Welcome to parenthood," I said sweetly. He looked down at his sleep pants, now decorated with evidence of Luna's excellent aim, and then at our daughter, who was making happy gurgling sounds like she'd accomplished something magnificent. "She did that on purpose," he said. "She's 3 months old. She's tactical. Look at that face. That's the face of someone who planned this." Luna chose that moment to smile. Her first real smile. Not gas, not a reflex. An actual, genuine smile directed right at her father. And Henry melted, just completely dissolved into a puddle of paternal devotion. "Oh," he breathed. "Oh, you're forgiven. You can pee on me anytime you want. You're perfect. Absolutely perfect." "You're a disaster," I said, but I was smiling. Moving into the room to help him finish the diaper change properly. "Move over. Let me show you how it's done." I was doing fine. You had it backward. That was strategic confusion, lulling the enemy into a false sense of security. The enemy is a diaper, Henry. A very complicated diaper with too many tabs and not enough instructions. We worked together, me guiding, him following with the kind of intense focus that made me fall in love with him all over again. Because this was the Alpha King. This powerful, capable man who ruled kingdoms and commanded respect from everyone he met. And he was learning how to change diapers at 2 a.m. with the same dedication he brought to everything else. "There," I said when Luna was clean and dry and dressed in fresh pajamas. "See? Not so hard. Easy for you to say. You're naturally gifted at this. I've had 3 months of practice. You've been busy running a kingdom. Still, you make it look effortless." He picked up Luna, cradling her against his chest with a gentleness that made my heart ache. "I'm terrible at this." "You're not terrible. You're learning. There's a difference. Marcus says I'm hopeless. Marcus is an ass." "Marcus is standing in the doorway," said a voice from behind me. I turned to find Henry's beta leaning against the frame, arms crossed, looking far too amused for someone who should be sleeping. "What are you doing here?" Henry demanded. Heard the yelp of terror. Came to investigate. Found the mighty Alpha King being defeated by an infant. Marcus's grin widened. "This is the best entertainment I've had in months." "You're fired," Henry said. "You can't fire me. I'm essential. I'm the king. I can fire anyone. And yet here I am, still employed, still watching you struggle with basic infant care." Marcus moved into the room. "Here, let me show you how it's done." "I don't need—" But Marcus had already taken Luna from Henry's arms. Had her changed and settled in record time with the efficiency of someone who actually knew what he was doing. "How?" Henry demanded. "How are you better at this than me?" 7 younger siblings, Marcus said, handing Luna back. "I was changing diapers before I could shift. Meanwhile, you were an only child raised by servants who did everything for you." "That's not—" Henry stopped. "Okay, that's fair. But still, you could have offered to help earlier instead of watching me suffer." "Where's the fun in that?" Marcus's expression softened slightly. "You're doing fine, Henry. Better than fine. Luna adores you. Anna adores you. You're just not good with the practical stuff yet." "Yet," Henry repeated. "Meaning I'll eventually be competent? Meaning you'll eventually stop putting diapers on backward?" Marcus headed for the door. "Probably. Maybe. The odds are at least 30%. "I hate you," Henry called after him. "No, you don't," Marcus called back. You love me. I'm delightful. The door closed, leaving us alone with Luna, who was already drifting back to sleep against Henry's chest. He's right, you know, I said quietly. You are doing fine. Better than fine. I'm a disaster. You're a father. There's a learning curve. I moved closer, wrapped my arms around both of them, my mate and my daughter, my whole world condensed into this moment. And you're doing it with the same intensity you bring to everything else, which means you're going to be amazing at this, eventually. Eventually, Henry echoed. But he was smiling now. Looking down at Luna with such love, it made my chest tight. Think she'll remember this, when she's older? How bad I was at the beginning. Probably. And she'll probably give you endless grief about it. I rested my head on his shoulder. But she'll also remember that you were there, that you tried, that you loved her enough to keep showing up even when you had no idea what you were doing. I really don't know what I'm doing, he admitted. Neither do I. We're making it up as we go. That's what parenthood is. I thought being king was hard, he murmured. Turns out that's the easy part. This terrifies me. Good. If you weren't terrified, I'd be worried. I pressed a kiss to his jaw. Come back to bed. Luna's asleep. We should be too. What if she wakes up again? Then we'll deal with it. Together. Like we deal with everything else. We walked back to our bedroom, Henry, still carrying Luna because he refused to put her down. Said he liked the weight of her against his chest, and I realized something. This was it. This was the life I'd thought I'd lost forever. Family. Love. Home. Not the palace or the crown or the title. But this. These quiet moments at 2 a.m. when it was just us. Just our little family figuring things out together. 7 months ago, I'd been sitting in a corner of a ballroom, pregnant and alone, thinking my life was over. Now I was queen. Mate. Mother. Partner to a man who loved me enough to fight moon herb and council politics and backward diapers. And somewhere, maybe in exile, maybe trying to rebuild a life she'd destroyed, Sabrina was learning that cruelty didn't pay, that poisoning your sister and attempting to ruin lives had consequences. But I didn't think about her much anymore. Didn't need to. She was the past. A cautionary tale. A reminder of what jealousy and bitterness could do to a person. This Henry settling Luna into her bassinet beside our bed, then climbing under the covers and pulling me close, this was the future. I love you, he murmured into my hair. I love you too, I whispered back, even when I put diapers on backward, especially then. He laughed quietly, and we drifted off to sleep wrapped around each other, Luna's soft breathing the soundtrack to our contentment. It wasn't perfect. We still had challenges ahead. Council politics. Neighboring territories testing our borders. The constant scrutiny that came with being royal. The normal chaos of raising a child while trying to run a kingdom. But it was ours. This messy, beautiful, impossible life we'd built from lies and moon herb, and one perfect night in a garden, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Not for my old life. Not for the easier path. Not for a world where Henry and I never collided in the darkness and made something miraculous out of mutual brokenness. This was exactly where I was meant to be. In the arms of the Alpha King who couldn't change a diaper to save his life but loved me and our daughter with a fierce devotion that made every struggle worth it. In a palace that had become a home, with a future that stretched out bright and uncertain and full of possibility. And if sometimes late at night when Luna was sleeping and Henry was holding me close, I thought about that girl in the corner of the ballroom, I sent her a silent message. You survived. You made it through. And look what was waiting on the other side. Everything. Absolutely everything. Thank you for listening to another emotional, magical shifter romance here on Tina Romance Library. If you enjoyed today's story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, so you never miss more powerful, heart-gripping romance stories.